subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Absolute death. His eyes fell on the last line of the exposed content. Zheng Xian couldn't help but frown again. The situation is unknown. I'm not sure what the death that comes suddenly in it is. And the current concept of death is shrouded, and whether it has disappeared or still exists is still in doubt. No, it's better to wait until the situation is a little clearer before proceeding to the next step. Zheng Xian finally shook his head. Seek stability first. Now, let the satellite and the detection team locate the location of SCP-2935. Zheng Xian's voice was not loud, but his attitude was very firm, and he made a decision directly on the matter. A universe where all living things die. The observer frowned. He is not a man who has never seen the world. Although not well known, observers who have been secretly watching the world and checking in on various cosmic events are definitely the top in the universe in terms of knowledge. Dead universe. It's not like he hasn't heard of this concept. The universe has more than one. Among the information that has been circulated, there are many kinds of strange universes. Eaten up by Uncle Ton, occupied by mutant, slaughtered by Deadpool, all kinds of wonderful universes. He has heard some after observing them. But complete death, together with all life forms, they all died without warning on the same day, which is a bit outrageous. Is this containment related to the death god? The observer frowned. In his opinion, only the god of death, who represents the concept of death and transcends all dimensions in the real universe, possesses this power. It's getting more and more complicated. The observer's eyes sank slightly, and his heart sank directly. Dead universe? Collector's pupils shrank as he was heading towards the earth. My whole body began to tremble. Do not misunderstand. He is not afraid. He was so excited. Excitement from the depths of the bone marrow. This is a dead universe. Even in the multi-universe, it is a rare spectacle. 2. Can this be one of my favorites? The face of the collector changed drastically. Anne's unbearable ecstasy and excitement began to creep up on his face. The corners of the mouth seemed to be bent to the sky. I have to say, he's starting to kind of wish those containments were real now. If it's fake, where should he find such an interesting collection? With the exposure of SCP-2935, the entire universe was in a frenzy of excitement. Someone is dismissive. Someone scoffed. But more people who were skeptical couldn't help casting their gazes. Nothing else. It's a huge scene. The situation in the universe changes suddenly. On the Earth, everyone is crazy in his own way. The satellites in space are searching at full speed, and sparks are about to be sparked. The special forces of the major organizations rush to remote areas in a swarm, specifically drilling into various cemeteries and graves. Those who didn't know it thought that a global tomb robber gang was dispatched. Found it. The exclamation sounded from nowhere. Instantly attracted the attention of countless people. When SCP-2935 is exposed to the world all the time, it is found that there is no way to hide it. The information spread quickly and was forced to become shared. Attack! Attack! Army attack! An impatient voice came from the Eagle Sauce Army. Revival of the glory of Hydra is our duty. Hail Hydra! In the unknown underground base, there was a speech standing on a beer barrel, and countless people gathered and roared at his feet. It's time to do it. This may be our new opportunity. Professor X looked at Phoenix with a complicated look in his eyes, as if he was in a battle between heaven and man. SHIELD Director. Let's order. Black Widow licked the dagger in his hand. Wearing tights, she has already entered a fighting state. The next fart, Nick Fury's mouth twitched. I can't hold back the words in my heart. Toe, you called me braised egg last time. Don't think I don't remember. Wait first. Nick Fury shook his head. He was unwilling to do anything when the situation was unknown. Especially SCP-2935 is terrifying at first glance. Terms such as absolute death, no matter how you look at it, it is not a good thing. The Avengers Alliance family property that I saved with great difficulty. If the whole ride in, then stop. T. Must think long-term. Nick Fury shook his head, thinking that the behavior of that ancient country on the other side of the ocean is very useful for reference. But Captain America frowned. They've already made their move, so why don't we just sit back and watch? And the power to destroy the universe, if you sit idly by. Captain America frowned with a dignified expression. That's right. I also think we should make a move. Thunder flashes in Thor's eyes. Thor, who is Asgard, is also the god of war, so he will not shrink back because of fear. Nick Fury has a bit of a headache. It is a good thing that the team members are strong, but the stronger they are, the more character they have. It is not easy to lead the team. D. The surprise team is not there. Braised Eggs kind of missed the stunning team in Interstellar, just when he bowed his head in thought. The invisible fluctuations bloomed, and the surrounding space suddenly distorted. Ooh, Doctor Strange fixed his gaze and was the first to notice something was wrong. A green halo emanates from the chest, as if it will bloom in the next moment. I have Agamotto, the token of Sorcerer Supreme. Ancient One has handed it over to him in advance. Hey, calm down, dude. I think we've met. The sound of mechanical roar sounded. Walking out of the void is a high-tech mecha, which looks familiar and unfamiliar. B. The voice from the machine was very familiar to everyone present. Tony, Story Stark, Iron Man. Surprised and shocked voices blurted out from the faces of the people around. Hey, it's me. Today's welcome ceremony is really warm. But man, if you put away that discharging hammer, we might hit it off better. The sound is transmitted from the machinery. The sound of machinery turning. The mech lifted upwards, revealing the face inside. Really, it was Tony's handsome and rough face. You can actually manipulate the power of space. Black Widow looked shocked. It's like living with your little friend for more than 10 years, and then he suddenly tells you that he is actually God. It's just a little trick. Tony raised his head proudly. But soon, the window paper was pierced by the marinated egg. Is it the magical effect of Tesseract? Ahem, a little breakthrough. Don't worry about these. Let's study the situation of the containment. This is an anomaly that can affect the death of a universe. How can we Avengers sit idly by? Tony knows how to change the subject. Put the marinated eggs directly on the fire to bake. No, too dangerous. Can act, but need to slow down. Nick Fury shook his head. The density was very firm. Danger? No, no, no. Listen to me. I have a brilliant idea. Tony shook his head. A mysterious smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He has confidence. The plan he proposed, Nick Fury absolutely cannot. An unknown remote continent. Below the cemetery, not far from the tombstone of an unknown person, there's a deep cave. In the past, there were few people. There are few places even animals will arrive. Now, surprisingly surrounded by crowds, you can see loaded guns and live ammunition from a long distance away, and all kinds of artillery shells and chariots are waiting. A display of modern weapons built a line of defense around the entrance of the cave. In several clear camps, flags of different countries, organizations are flying. Sure enough, in this kind of large-scale competition, no organization can be stronger than the five gangsters. Space fluctuations. The power of invisible spreads in the void. It was as if a passage had been torn open in midair, and the sound of footsteps continued to be heard in the void. Tread. Thousands of people are the same. The pace is completely consistent, just like a robot. People can't help but think of the Foundation. It wasn't until the existence in the space revealed their true faces that they were relieved. It's a robot, or a mechanical armor. But then, soon the uneasy heart came up again. If there are only a dozen or so mechanical armors with a height of 3 to 5 meters, it is still within the acceptable range of human beings. But in front of me, thousands of powerful mechas came out of it, with heavy cannons and long swords mounted on their bodies. They were extremely powerful at first glance, continuously coming out of the void. It seems endless. As if time march, acting decisively 1.6, walking towards SCP 2935 in an orderly manner. Soldiers from all over the world, laying defense lines and trying to monopolize this universe, don't even have the courage to pull the trigger. Joke. This posture, it looks like an interstellar invasion. Who dares to hold back? Ultron. It's Ultron. Ultron series mechs made by Iron Man. Finally, a voice broke the silence. Although it looks a bit different, if you look closely, you can still see some shadows of Ultron from these mechs, just like the Ultron series. A brand new mecha with an updated iteration. Just now, it's like a rescue scene across time and space. It's actually a power from the Earth itself. This is the perfect solution, you said. Nick Fury's face turned green. What's this? This is showing muscle to everyone. Thousands of fully armed mechas. The fighting power is no less than 100,000 elite troops. And these mechs also hold the power to travel through space. It can enter the political center and military abdomen anytime and anywhere to carry out precise strikes. This is simply 1,000,000 times more powerful than nuclear deterrence. A disagreement pushes the crystal, the kind that can't be stopped. This is that the power you researched from the Tesseract. Nick Fury's voice was a little hoarse. Don't worry, the real drama is yet to come. Tony, who was driving Iron Man, couldn't see his expression clearly. Only a dull voice sounded from the machine, with a lot of self-confidence. This is the real automata. Across time and space? This is just an insignificant type of mech power. Tony stared straight ahead. His eyes seemed to be filled with terrifying divine light. Chapter 091, Dead Universe. Foundation destroyed by death? Traveling through time and space is just the easiest use of Tesseract, Tony said nonchalantly. He still underestimated the horror of the completion program. With the help of the completion program, Tony relied on his amazing brain to easily let the mech in his hand, the battle suit, iterate again, and it has become the 4th version. Ultron 4 has a special transmission system. When more than 5 mechas are gathered together, they can use the Li Huang, which is similar to the time-traveling march just now. And the most important thing is control. Even across a universe, across an unknown space-time channel, Tony can manipulate these mechs. Tony looked down. In the eyes under the helmet, there is a divine radiance. He thought it was Tesseract, a special power formed with the help of space characteristics. But I didn't expect. This is basically self-filling from the completion program. From another supreme divinity. A supreme divinity who may be dead. Tony, can you control the actions of those mechs? Nick Fury turned his head in surprise. In Turverse control, there's also a containment in a horrible location. This technology is not only leading on the Earth, but also the top of the interstellar first class in the universe, right? Tony smiled slyly and didn't say much. Instead, he turned his gaze to the screen. Time march. I have completely stepped into the cave of SCP-2935 and entered another universe. After stepping out of the cave, the world suddenly opened up, and they came directly to a wide road, but judging from the traces just made on the road, they were definitely not the first batch of people visited by SCP-2935. Before them, there should be several groups of people entering, and there is no shortage of people with super abilities. The road was ravaged by the aftermath of the battle, and it looks a little dilapidated, but the traces are very new. It should have happened not long ago. But none of this has anything to do with Tony. He didn't come to fight. The mecha troops continued to go deep inside along the road, looking for the source of the catastrophe. What a weird 21st world. Tony frowned. Ultron 4 can realize holographic manipulation. After choosing a mecha as the driver and wearing the corresponding instruments and equipment, you can see a different kind of sight. It's like the player controls the game account. And the 5 senses communicate. You can perfectly feel the mech you are controlling and the things you touch. It's almost like crossing. It's just that it has become a Ultron for mecha by virtue of it. Tony definitely could hear everything around him. Silence. Deathly silence. Except for the sound they made when they stepped on the ground, there was no sound. Not only humans, but even animals, plants, and even insects have no sounds. This is too exaggerated. B. Thor, who was also driving a mecha, was a little taken aback. And what's even more interesting, in the exposure screen, the observe area should be the same as the outside. But they looked through the mecha, but the scenery they saw with their own eyes was very dim. The scenery in another mirror universe seems to be missing all the color and vitality. The grass is withered. There are no trees, no shrubs. It doesn't look like their world at all. Some kind of strange reflection. It makes people feel creepy. There is a situation. Captain America, who was scattered to search for the situation, drove the mech to send out a signal. Humanity. Traces of human presence were found. Signal flares sounded. In the internal communication network, several people who heard the voice quickly rushed over in their mechs. It is a farmhouse. After approaching for several kilometers away from the road, I finally found the human habitation, but it's dead now. The powerful power of the mecha allowed them to easily break through the door and walk in. Look up. The lights can be seen still on, and the electrical system appears to be working fine. However, after lowering his head and entering the room, he found a terrible scene. Several adult corpses, 3 female corpses, and a male were sitting at the dining table together, as if preparing to eat. A baby boy and girl were lying on the ground nearby. If from here, it can also be said that the family seems to have died normally, if not so badly. But when the details are also after exposure, bacteria, there are no bacteria and microorganisms on these corpses. Tony's pupils trembled, and his expression was extremely shocked. You ask him why he can distinguish these microscopic creatures with the naked eye. Joke. Ground. Apparently dead for days. Even the older corpses didn't smell of corruption at all. There was no obvious cause of death on the body, and the last meal at home was still there. The chicken, mashed potatoes, and other dishes on the table looked cold and hard, but there was no sign of corruption or deterioration at all. It's just like microorganisms and bacteria are also killed together. Natasha Romanoff swallowed. Even her agent who walked out of the Red House felt a little creepy. This absolutely conceptual death, not only humans, animals, but even microorganisms, which cannot be detected by the naked eye, cannot escape the concept of death. This is much more terrifying than what the zombie universe sounds like. The bottommost microbes and bacteria die. For nature, it is an irreversible biological collapse. Same picture. It wasn't just the members of the Avengers Alliance who were manipulating the mechs. And stay in front of the screen. Countless people watching the progress of the exposure video. Everything the Avengers experienced was broadcasted in real time on the screen. The Ancient One and Odin frowned. Although it had been expected, the tragedy in the picture still made their expressions a little dignified. From macro to micro, downright death. No being is exempt from this. This feeling it is really complicated. Especially, this mirror universe looks highly similar to the world they are in. Can't microbes escape? The observer's expression was a little ugly. The bottom link of the biosphere also completely collapsed, which means that this universe completely collapsed. It can't be cured. Hopeless. Wait to die. Unless the 5 gods take action to reshape. Otherwise, even the top cosmic powerhouses would find it difficult to do anything under such circumstances. A universe that is completely dead. Purple Sweet Potato Essence, who was sitting high on the throne, slowly opened his eyes. While the Infinity Gauntlet has yet to be collected, Mia's supremacy has taken shape. A completely dead universe. It is definitely the best gift for offering sacrifices. Thanos' eyes moved slightly. Although it is true that he is a family planning director, he is also a thorough licking dog by the god of death. And if the cause of death in this universe can be eliminated, something moved on Thanos' face. In this case, he'll get a whole new universe. The desire to snap your fingers and wipe out half the population of a universe equally can be changed into a transfer, as long as there is only half the population in each universe. So, even if no one is killed, his population erasure plan will be successful. Essentially, Thanos is not the Slayer. He doesn't feel excited by killing. He is only on the road of practicing his ideals, so in the battle to snatch gems. Facing Tony's attack, Thanos will say, "You are not the only one cursed by knowledge," and give Tony the same respect. Because in his mind, essentially, he and Tony are one of a kind. "Fleet, go to Earth." Thanos' low voice rang out. Countless fleets docked at the side of the planet set sail, one after another. He had to participate in this battle, and his identity as a dog of death and an idealist made him unable to give up. When the content in the exposure screen implement, and with a more terrifying posture after appearing in the eyes of everyone. More cosmic powerhouses began to move towards the small broken ball in the distant galaxy, cast coveted eyes, and even set off directly. In the mirror universe of SCP-2935, idyllic farmhouse. Going out of the house and into the fields, the surrounding villages die in exactly the same way. Around, there are no living organisms at all. No matter how hard they searched, they could not find any signs of life. Tony, who was sorting out the items in the village and trying to find some clues, suddenly raised his head. Radio. The mecha unit who was searching for clues sent a message at the same time. The mediocre radio was not eye-catching at first, but the signature made Tony's eyes widen. Foundation. It's the Foundation in this mirror universe. The radio they send out. The degree of encryption is not high and can be easily deciphered. The content is converted from electromagnetic signals to voice. Almost all of our network communications have been interrupted, which may be caused by a containment breach of unknown scale. All people should stay at home in accordance with the instructions and wait for the containment team to deal with the breach. This message will be released from 2016. It will start broadcasting on April 20th, 2019 until the sound stopped abruptly. As if it had suffered some horror, it stopped suddenly. SHIELD. Gulu. In a quiet conference room, there is only the constant sound of saliva spitting. Temporarily disengaged from the control mecha. Look at the companions around. Several members of the Avengers Alliance looked at each other with cold expressions. In a mirror universe constructed by SCP-2935, there is actually a foundation. Captain America's expression was a little dignified. This is so unexpected. Should be. Ancient One Magician's previous inference is that there are countless foundations in countless timelines, each guarding the timelines and corresponding dimensions, resisting the invasion of other forces. Doctor Strange chimed in. Is this what matters now? It's the Foundation. The Foundation in the mirror universe is probably also involved in the concept of death and is completely dead. Tony's expression was a little ugly. No wonder he thought so. The content deciphered by the radio is really scary. T6. Abrupt ellipsis. When it came to the last critical moment, the sound actually stagnated. It's just like ordinary people who died without warning. Could it be? The Foundation was also swept by the concept of death and died without warning. That's why there is a possible pause in the radio. The more I think about it, the more afraid I become. The more I am afraid, the more I think about it. It was just a sign of rising. But as it was constantly brewing and growing in my heart, it soon turned into a towering giant tree. Foundation. It was also affected by this force and fell into dead silence. 573. After receiving a summons from Doctor Strange, Ancient One and Odin looked at each other for a long time, and the group finally recovered from the stiffness. Foundation. Even the Foundation in the mirror universe. Absolutely unimaginable horror. The Foundation in their universe can erase concepts with a single spear, and no one knows where its limit is. The Foundation of the mirror universe, even if it is not comparable, is not weak. The Foundation that can deal with SCPs and anomalies is definitely in existence above countless organizations. Now, even this kind of organization beyond imagination. All are suspected to perish in a universe constructed by SCP-2935. This time, what exactly is the containment we are facing? Odin felt an indescribable palpitation in his heart, unspeakable uneasiness. It is countless times more terrifying than the Ragnarok that I have predicted. Horror beyond imagination. In this mirror universe, there is actually a foundation. The observer frowned. At first, he thought that the death of the universe was because there was no foundation to resist SCP. So, with those strange contained objects, the power continues to spread, which then leads to the spread of the concept of death. But now it seems, obviously not. After actively responding, there is still no sign of death. And looking at this posture, it is very possible that the entire universe is under the shadow of the concept of death. Is this the true power of the containment? The observer swallowed. From the bottom of my heart, I feel the horror. Just one SCP anomaly. It can kill the entire mirror universe. This is no less than many original artifacts. The lighter in his hand can only have this kind of power when it explodes to the limit, etc. Perhaps we still have a way to confirm. Tony's steady voice sounded in the silent conference room. 682. SCP. 682 is not a fire lizard. The so-called immortal monster. If the Foundation exists in the mirror universe, there must also be the unholy lizard. We can follow the direction of the radio, looking for Foundation headquarters. Use SCP-682 to verify. See what the limit of this absolute death is. Tony's voice was like the evening drum and the morning bell. Break the inherent deadlock. Yes, SCP-2935 is absolute death. But isn't SCP-682 also called immortal? It is entirely possible to use this point to see what the limit of this concept of death is. This wave is called Beat Magic with Magic. Chapter 092, The Omnic Disaster. Not one left. Crazy killings sweeping the universe. Shoo! Countless streamers shot up into the sky. When the power of the mecha is raised to the highest level, the Ultron 4 mecha in extreme speed is not inferior to the speed-type super ability 1 at all. You can't see after images clearly, but you can only see countless streamers blooming. This is the power of technology. Maybe it's also the force of coercion. Drip, drip. Positioning shown in radar exploration. It may be because of the sudden death catastrophe that paralyzed all detections within the Foundation. Following the direction of radio propagation, the mecha quickly found its direction. Each mecha is equivalent to a small analysis table. Thousands of mechas are jointly deduced, and the speed is even more terrifying than that of national organizations. It is definitely a technology ahead of the times. It's over there. Tony murmured softly and quickly locked on to the target location. Walk. There is no hesitation. With the sound of Tony's command, the power system was fully activated. Rumble. Rolling sound waves pass through the sky. There are white lines drawn in the clouds, like a plane passing by. Fila. Roar. The sound of the mecha landing. Although he was afraid of the weirdness in the mirror universe and the power of the Foundation, Tony did not choose to start the space jump. But the mecha troops advancing at full speed are also not slow. The goal was reached soon. Is it here? Natasha Romanoff steered the mech forward. The front looked like an ordinary building bunker. It should be below. Tony walked slowly from behind. Foundation. The veil of mystery. Is it finally going to be revealed? Nick Fury's pupil shrunk. Looking at the content of the screen and the video, the expression was a little uncontrollable excitement. Start with showing up. It has always been surrounded by clouds and fog, hiding in the mist and making it difficult to see clearly. But every time the tip of the iceberg is revealed, it will make people frightened and shocked. The terrifying power is simply terrifying beyond imagination. This kind of indescribable giant strength actually appeared on the Earth. Just like Shinsho Village, where there is an ultimate boss, is an unimaginable oppression for every organization. Now, finally, I can take the initiative to lift a corner of his veil. Braised eggs definitely excited, even excited a little out of control. The Foundation in the mirror universe. He is also a foundation in essence. Don't take bean buns as dry food. Even in the ruins, you can find a lot of useful things. Or only this kind of crippled or even destroyed Foundation base has the qualifications for them to pick up leaks. Heyday? Where is the coolness and where to stay? Is the veil about to be revealed? Ancient One frowned, instinctively wanted to use Eye of Agamotto to predict the future in advance. After the hands-on, the queen and daughter-in-law got up. The gem has been delivered to Doctor Strange. Why? Hopefully, it doesn't end in the worst possible way. Ancient One let out a long sigh. Yes, I hope the situation will not deteriorate too seriously. Odin nodded. Facing this kind of unexpected development, even he, an Ancient One, seemed weak. He can only rejoice. I didn't venture into it myself. Across a dimension, the power of SCP-2935 shouldn't affect it, right? Odin was uneasy, a little unsure. Influence. The observer frowned. Try to get some perception from SCP-2935, but the feedback in perception is just an ordinary cave. It's really not that simple. The observer shook his head. The vigilance in his heart became more dignified, and he became ready for battle. If the power that can make the mirror universe die is leaked out, it will definitely be a disaster. He doesn't want the world to repeat the same mistakes again, even if it's only a 1 in 10,000 possibility. He didn't dare to gamble. Mirror Universe Foundation base. I can't find a switch at all. If you want me to say, just rush in. Thor's grumpy voice sounded. There are building bunkers all around, and there is no normal way to enter it all. As expected of the Foundation, even after all the defenses fail, they can be paralyzed by just relying on the mechanism to hide. Then go ahead. Tony nodded. Time is limited and cannot be wasted. Directly expand the metal storm to wash the ground. Truth. Always within range of the cannon. Successful. Tony raised his head unexpectedly. Unexpectedly, the real cannonball blasted open the door. Yet there is a hole that reveals a glimmer of light. But there was no joy in his heart, only heavy worry. This situation, the probability of the Foundation being born is even greater. It is very likely that the entire army will be wiped out. Only when the staff and the base inside disappeared completely would it be possible to tolerate the door being forcibly opened by outsiders. Tony left half of the mecha troops outside and began to garrison, and the rest entered sequentially. With apprehension in mind, everyone manipulated their mechas and walked slowly into the underground base. Fortunately, the lift was still working. However, when they walked out of the dark passage, they came to the Foundation's underground base square. The sight in front of them made them too scared to say a word. Far away, Zilala, the fire was still burning, and the wrecked fighter plane seemed to have fallen directly from the sky above the landing platform. The underground dome high above is dotted with bright lights everywhere, but under the illumination of lights. But it wasn't the warm sense of security, but the corpses scattered all over the place. All kinds of staff members wearing Foundation uniforms, without exception, fell on the cold floor. Someone is holding documents in their hands. Someone is operating machinery. Someone was trying to FM. They all fell down at work or halfway through the action, and there was no painful expression on their faces, as if death came without warning. Many people, before reacting, have already fallen into death. Tony observed carefully, and even found that in the mirror universe, the members of the Foundation are different from their time and space, not like clone personnel, but everyone has a different appearance like normal humans. Continue to search inside. Tony frowned. They dare not act without authorization within the Foundation, for fear of triggering an uncontrollable chain reaction. But he can completely let the mech go to rummage. As long as mechanical materials are provided, it can be manufactured in minutes. This is the most perfect consumable. Tony tried to find some hope from the underground base. 2. Constantly check out the results. But it made his heart sink completely. D. Or die. They searched room by room in the administrative building of the Foundation. Even the bathroom and stairs were not spared. But it was only found that they were well-preserved corpses. Staff, researcher, doctor, special forces, reality bender, everyone, without exception. And it looks like it's been dead for days. With the help of the Foundation's complete industrial system and equipment, Tony also temporarily collected some samples from the corpse for research, and finally discovered the reason why the corpse was well preserved. Without warning, these corpses underwent complete and sudden death on a cellular level. Even the bacteria that decomposed the corpse also died together. So the bodies were well preserved. Hateful. Looking at the spectrum in the analytical instrument, Tony couldn't help but swear to cover up his anxiety. In the world constructed by SCP-2935, death is total and absolute, and it cuts across all types of life forms. Next, time to test that crazy idea. That's SCP-682, the immortal lizard, one of the most terrifying and deadly creatures known as immortality. Under the accelerated search of the mecha troops, clues were soon discovered. SCP-682's containment is on the lowest level of the base. Tony and his group walked into his isolation facility, only to discover a more desperate truth. SCP-682, unkillable heresy. Floating in the air, there is no place to die, and the monster who looks down on Death God is no exception. The immortal lizard also failed to escape the death rules of the mirror universe of SCP-2935. SCP-682, that monster died. Odin's pupils shrunk, his expression a little restless. There are not many other contacts, and the perception is not deep. But SCP-682 is not the fire lizard Odin, but he fought with his own hands. Odin's power broke out completely, coupled with the blessings of the gods on the destroyer armor. The result was still bloody. The tooth marks on the gun of eternity haven't been filled yet. A blow capable of smashing stars hit Grandpa 682, but only restrained it for a while. Soon, terrifying adaptability and immortality. It evolved enough to ignore the attack of the Eternal Gun, and even crush the Eternal Gun in turn. Perverted physique. Odin couldn't think of anything that could defeat it, not to mention killing it. But now, the 682 uncle died before his eyes. Floating in the air, there is no burial place for death, and only corpses are left of the mighty monster. Let the void be his nameless tomb. Odin couldn't help but gasp. SCP-2935. What kind of monster is this? Odin clenched his fists tightly, with an indescribable seriousness on his face. His three views. Destroyed by the containment again. Absolute death. Is this the absolute death? The observer frowned into the word Chuan, as if with an unresolved sadness. Uncle 682, he has definitely seen it before. What happened on the Earth, a sea island, how could it be hidden from his eyes? That terrifying adaptability and immortality. Even if it was him, he still wasn't sure about killing Grandpa 682. Even taking out a lighter in his arms. With his level of belief, it is difficult to erupt to this level of destruction. The observer's perception of himself is quite clear, and 682 Uncle is more than simply killed. Instead, death without warning. It died in an instant, and from its floating body, there was no trace of struggle at all. Invincible and powerful monster. The corpse actually floated in the strong hydrochloric acid solution like this. It's just like an unremarkable test specimen. Looking at this scene, I felt an indescribably complicated mood. It's too exaggerated. The corner of Thor's mouth twitched, a bit unacceptable. Everyone who looked at the exposure screen was shocked by the shock and a little dumbfounded. Not to mention, the members of the Avengers Alliance who looked directly at the corpse of 682. Reach out. It seems that they can use the technology of the five senses of the mecha to feel the touch of the 682 uncle. This feeling, it is beyond words. Come, keep exploring. Be sure to discover the cause of the death outbreak. Tony's deep voice sounded, just when I wanted to continue exploring in the mirror universe and found traces of the concept of death. Invisible's undulating bloom. Tony, who was manipulating the mecha, suddenly had a black eye and was ejected by the system. When I opened my eyes again, consciousness has returned to the war room inside S.H.I.E.L.D. Hey brother, what's going on? Battery dead? Could it be an unknown attack? A rustling sound sounded from the side. It was obvious that not only Tony, but also other members of the Avengers Alliance were all ejected by the system, disconnecting the connection and manipulation of the five senses and being kicked out of the mecha manipulation abruptly. Impossible. Ultron. 4 is equipped with miniature nuclear reactors. For these power sources, Tony not only hollowed out the Stark industry, but even the SHIELD of the marinated egg was almost squeezed out by him. With the reactor as the energy drive, there is no Wong's kinetic energy exhaustion at all. The mechs never broke out in fierce battles. Click, 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 click. Tony kept fiddling with the machine in his hand, trying to connect with other mechas. But it turns out, nothing. Now, the possibility of being attacked by surprise can be ruled out. Whether it is the exploration of the underground base or the mecha guarded by the martial law on the surface, they cannot be contacted. Not lost connection. Instead, access is denied, just like being blocked. BCH. Obviously, I am the creator. A group of mechanical intelligences actually blocked me. Tony almost laughed out of anger. Dude, calm. Your mecha is... There's something wrong. Just when Tony's expression was a little dark, Thor was beside him, poking him on the shoulder. Point to the exposure video in the sky. Content of the screen. People couldn't help but widen their eyes. Mecha. Thousands of mechs soared into the sky. All kinds of guns and weapons compressed in the body are all mounted and equipped. Separate half of the mechs search for resources in the base and use the production line to produce and proliferate at the same time. The mecha troop also began to deploy tactical formations, with the underground base as the center, and continued to expand outward. The cold muzzle aimed at the explorer in SCP-2935 Rumble. All kinds of guns roared. Flight mecha units in the sky, using radar perception to find targets. Then, like a fire-breathing, all kinds of bullets, shells, and even lasers and energy cannons poured out. The tide of war. It's begun. Those who entered the mirror universe received blows beyond imagination. Controlling the top technology of the galaxy, coupled with the power to travel through space at will, even super ability users cannot resist. The terrifying omnic disaster began to sweep across the mirror universe, madly slaughtering all intruders from outside. Goal not one left. Chapter 093. The Unkillable. 5 Great Gods. Death comes at last. What is this? BD, get the hell out of here. Where did the monster come from? Everyone be careful. There are monsters in the sky. Be careful of the artillery fire, and find a cover to hide. Damn BD, where did this come from? There is such a mecha lineup on Earth. Is it an alien invasion? Damn, run. I'm chasing you. With the underground base as the original center, it radiates outward. The attack range of the mecha troops quickly covered a large field of vision. The 5 mechas form a tactical team, and after the radar detects traces of life, they immediately travel through the space to attack. A merciless attack. Coupled with the pouring of a large amount of ammunition, the explorers in SCP-2935 were beaten and complained again and again. Not just psychological oppression, there is also the suppression of iron and blood. All of them are rushing to slaughter. One time, bloody flowers bloom everywhere in SCP-2935. The withered and yellow earth was stained with blood. The dull color has also become a bit bright red. These, it's all your orders? Thor turned his head. He looked at Tony in disbelief. He looked so thick-eyed. How'd he do such a bad thing? Don't look at the short time. However, the mechas of the 4th iteration are all monsters with top combat power, and they kill especially on the battlefield. There are no longer many people lying in a pool of blood. Fart, how could I give such an order? Tony didn't even think about it. He directly denied it. He won't take the blame. B. Captain America pointed to the exposure video. In the picture, there are silver-white painted mechs walking out of the space and then firing at the living body. The ruthless tongue of flames shattered all life. Everything is useless. Tony's rebuttals were full of rebuttals, all stuck in his throat, and his expression was a little stiff. He lowered his head with a dejected look on his face. With great difficulty, I squeezed out a sentence. I didn't manipulate it at all, and all the means of landing were actively blocked by the mech troops. Not only the login method, but even the access was blocked and rejected. Tony's face darkened. I kept clicking on the screen, but the text popped up by the module made people bite their back molars and want to smash the computer. Ding! Unable to access. Ding. This operation conflicts with the first element, and service is refused. The exact same words kept ringing in the system panel. The other side, the frantic killing in SCP-2935 gradually reached its climax, with scarlet blood everywhere. The first element, what is the purpose you set for these mechs? 413. Dr. Banner walked over, frowning. On the premise that Hulk is not awakened, is not controlled by another personality, and becomes the Hulk. Banner's IQ is still at the top level, and he can capture the elements of what Tony said in a few clicks. Core target. Definitely protect humanity. Protect the Earth. Tony was resolute and decisive, without any hesitation in his words. But, in the exposed video above, there is a picture of mech troops slaughtering wildly. It always makes people feel unconvincing. A hole. Tony gritted his teeth and bought iron just when he lowered his head, with a complicated expression, and a strange light appeared in his eyes. The metallic sound of JRVS suddenly sounded. Gentlemen, receive message from Ultron, for Mecha. A message across time and space. Tony raised his head suddenly, with a surprised expression on his face. Ultron 4, messaging across time and space. Regardless of the noun, it is to the extent that people feel tense. When two nouns are needed together, the shock formed is even more noticeable. Content. What's in it? Tony's voice was a little hoarse. He had a hunch that this would be a big melon. Not only him, there were also members of the Avengers Alliance next to them, and they all rushed over when they heard the movement. Mech information? Messaging in the mirror universe. Don't they already have intelligence? What kind of mecha did you build? This is too strong. A group of people couldn't hold back their curiosity and rushed over one after another. In the eyes of everyone in the Avengers Alliance, Otter slowly revealed. The message read, I don't have any answers. I don't think there are any. I'm going to keep doing this and hopefully fix it. Close it. The only way to save the world is to kill. My creator, I will follow your philosophy and protect mankind until the end of the long night, until death. The crowd of Avengers, including Nick Fury, who were confused by these words at first, especially Tony. He doesn't remember that he taught me so much swearing. Till the end, they discovered an encrypted audio log buried in a data deluge. Badge. What surprised Tony even more? The encryption method of this log is very close to his usual style. With the assistance of JRVS, it was quickly cracked successfully. Journal from Iron Man in a mirror universe. It's a message from Tony himself, but he's not the Iron Man Tony of the real world, but the Iron Man from the mirror universe Tony. The light and shadow flickered. In the holographic projection, a bust emerged. It looks highly similar to Tony, like two twins. They look very similar, but Tony in the holographic projection looks more mature and has experienced more hardships. But these are just minor details. After being slightly shocked, they were quickly shocked by the information conveyed in the log. In this message, Tony described everything they encountered in the mirror universe. In their world, the existence of SCP-2935 was also discovered, and they had to venture into it in order to investigate the situation. But without the help of the terrifying completion program, although he and Banner jointly developed Ultron and embedded Mind Gem in it, creating a powerful mech beyond imagination. But there's no way to remotely control it across a universe. So, they can only enter in person. When Tony and other members entered together, they came to a new dimension universe. Afterwards, they found out. The same inanimate, post-extinct organisms. In that ruined world. But there is one key difference between these things. It's not the mirror dimension they just studied, but a third, completely different dimension. In his memorable last sentence, Tony in the mirror universe admits that whatever the cause of the event was. In the third dimensional universe, a mirror dimensional entity that Thor believes is the death god, perhaps the thing that originally caused death, has returned with him. Entering his world, history is repeated. SCP-2935 is a portal through which the death god can travel through cosmic dimensions, and our universe of this dimension will be next. Inevitably doomed to death, perhaps it could be saved. But if people who enter SCP-2935 come back through the cave again, they may bring death. The death god in the mirror universe will follow them back. So, there is an explanation for the crazy slaughter of the mech troops. Kill all life forms that enter SCP-2935 and prevent them from returning through the cave. Make the death god in the mirror universe unable to follow them away. This is the absolute death chill of SCP-2935. It is also Tony from the mirror universe. Who thought of the solution? I was caught off guard by such explosive information. The people around couldn't help but gasped, and the temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Watch the exposure video. The scene of the massacre of the mecha troops seems to have a new interpretation at this moment. Scarlet blood flowed on the mech. The silvery white fuselage was painted with mottled traces dripping down the metal body. Surrounded by mechs exploding one by one, it was as gorgeous as a firework, composing a hymn together. It seems that there's an invisible oath resounding in my ears through the screen. My creator, I will follow your philosophy and protect mankind until the end of the long night, until death. An indescribable sense of trembling emerged in my heart. Silence. Long silence, until the deadlock was finally broken by Captain America. I think we should make things public. Captain America's hoarse voice was inexplicably choked. It's time to announce. Nick Fury nodded. After being infected by an unknown force, those mechs can refuse Tony's landing and manipulation, which means that they have independent wisdom and are omnics with their own thoughts. In this case, they are actually willing to die generously in order to carry out Tony's order. Protect human beings. The biological forms killed by death in SCP-2935 are not limited to humans, animals, and the like. Even computers, televisions, and these lifelike bodies are covered by death. Stay in the mirror universe of SCP-2935. The final outcome. Only irreversible death. In this kind of ending, stick to the portal of the cave and then risk death to clear and clean it. Protect humans? Nick Fury murmured under his breath. He, whose heart has been frozen, couldn't help being touched. Information leaked. With the deliberate connivance of Nick Fury, the contents of the SHIELD intelligence leak quickly rushed to the desks of major forces and even set off an upsurge on the internet. The world's strongest organization, SHIELD information leaked. Among the hot searches, there are 9 of them. Have to say braised eggs know how to announce the news. Death God in the mirror universe. A message from the last cosmic dimension. Death. Ancient One's pupils constricted, with Dr. Strange giving her confidence. The speed with which she gets first-hand information is definitely the fastest. Before our world, in the mirror universe, we first came into contact with SCP-2935 and entered the last cosmic dimension inside. Then there are living people coming out of it. That's why Death God followed closely, causing the entire mirror universe to enter death, which is the reason why countless people died unexpectedly. The horrifying reality shocks people. Even the well-informed Ancient One and Odin couldn't recover for a while. Turned out to be, this is the truth. Odin's voice was a little hoarse. The appalling reality filled his eyes with dread. Such creepy stuff. 1,000,000 times more terrifying than Ragnar K's prophecy. Mirror universe. Is it actually just implicated by the previous dimension of the universe? And now, we also met this fate. Odin stares at SCP-2935. It is obviously just a deep cave, but in his eyes is no different from a most terrifying abyss. Then hell, then the dark dimension, then all kinds of evil. A bottomless abyss that is billions of times more terrifying. More than one death. More than one universe. The observer's pupil shrinks just like the file size of the eye of a needle. This time he was completely frightened, since the destruction of the mirror dimension is caused by the death god of the previous dimension universe. So what is the reason why the universe in the last dimension fell into dead silence? It must also be the previous universe. The corners of the observer's mouth are smirking, and their eyes are abnormally dignified. It's like seeing a series of universes without beginning and end, falling into death one by one. Affected by the death god who travels through the universe dimensions, one by one falls into irreversible death. Even, there should be many universes. Didn't know what happened till the end. SCP 2935, absolutely. Yes. D. The observer's voice was a little stagnant, as if he had spoken word by word. His expression was extremely heavy. Stare at the cave in the exposure frame. An observer who has clearly witnessed countless major events in the universe and all kinds of horrible scenes. Facing SCP 2935, I couldn't help but feel indescribable fear in my heart. A dark cave, like the open mouth of a giant beast, and its prey is the entire universe. Damn it, a dead universe? A tragedy happening in a cycle? This is too exciting. My God, I didn't expect that we were so close to death. Damn, I'm scared to death. I'm scared to death. I'll change my pants first, and we'll talk when I get back. Phew. Fortunately, we have Iron Man. The Ultron series of mechas are the strongest shields that protect mankind. We will be fine when we see that, as long as the purge is over. The danger will pass, fart. You were the one who scolded Iron Man the worst. Your ID, Iron Man, is dead. You haven't changed it yet. Little Sunspot is showing his chicken feet. There's a lot of noise on the internet. However, the atmosphere was generally calm. After a short period of panic, he quickly relaxed. Anyway, there are armored troops inside. Those superpowers and ordinary people will definitely not be able to escape the cleaning. Can only say, sacrifice a little. Many people watch the show with a shrugging attitude, until a bullet screen drifted past quietly. Something's wrong, buddy. There seems to be a pervert who can't be killed by mech troops. In the mirror universe, the man in the black and red tights, and with the double knife style, stood up again and again under the roar of artillery fire. Obviously, he has been beaten to death countless times, but he stood up again and again. The bloody flesh did not affect his recovery. Hey buddy, next time, you can actually change the direction of the gun. You hit my A. The cheap temperament can be felt through the battle suit. This taste because of the rush. Behind his continuous resurrection and recovery, in the vagueness, a graceful voice is slowly taking shape. Obviously, it's just a phantom, but it has an indescribable temperament, as if it is above the mirror universe. Chapter 094, Ascension to God. HK Doomsday, the supreme divinity in the mecha. Prickly the knife flashes. The two long knives brought a series of electric sparks on the mech. The powerful high-speed cutting cut a deep scar on the mech's body. Corresponding, the mech raised its arm, and the energy cannon that shot out from the palm also rushed towards it with a powerful wave of air. But hitting it on a black and red battle suit has little effect. Last second, he was beaten until he vomited blood. Next second, he jumped up again alive and well. Listen to me, this little damage is far from enough to kill me. Dude, you're leaking oil. Pulling and pulling the long knife, it pierced through the mech's chest directly, along the buttocks to the chest. Coupled with his cheap voice, in the entire universe, there is only one person who fits this style. Deadpool possesses a near-immortal regenerative ability. And also being licked by death, Thanos personally cursed him for not being able to die, resisting the return of death. Immortality beyond imagination, relying on ability, known as the Little BCH Deadpool, has the ability to break the fourth wall. In the Infinite Universe, it is also a rare special character. Rumble. Cannon fire roars. The mecha troops fired in unison. As time went by, the superpowers and the advanced troops sent into the mirror universe of SCP 2935 were cleaned up, and the mechas that were scattered in search of life forms and killed gradually completed their missions and returned. A group of mechas spontaneously gathered beside Deadpool. Then, they set fire to attack him. The crisis that is about to be resolved must not be destroyed at the last moment. Overloaded attacks continue to erupt in the sky. All kinds of terrifying weapons are staged in turn, and even technologies that only exist in science fiction movies also occur from time to time. On the Earth, countless people waiting in front of the screen. They all watched an unprecedented arms feast intently. For some military enthusiasts, it is simply a supreme celebration comparable to the Chinese New Year Spring Festival. Followed by that, 18,000 Ways to Die in Deadpool. In the eye-popping metal storm, Deadpool was repeatedly beaten to death and then revived. It can be called the regeneration power of immortality. Even if he is smashed into a sieve by bullets, he can easily recover. Quite often, when it is completely torn and smashed into powder fragments, it will waste some time to recover. But in the end, it was easy to recover. Call out, light and shadow change. Press Deadpool on the space belt and teleport it again. If it weren't for the mechas, they all have their own space ability. Can't keep up with this guy. Hey, next. Can you tell the dog author to stop beating him? Besides, if you want to fight, keep away from me. My handsome face can't be affected. And I still count on this to help me pick up girls, you know. If you don't have a handsome face, you'll have to pick up all the big girls in the country. Add money. Deadpool kept complaining. He curled his lips, showing a dead fish-eyed expression. That's right. He can't be killed. But he meows in pain. All he has is regeneration, not paralysis of limbs. If his limbs have no feeling and the last joy of life is gone, he might as well be dead. Deadpool had a mean look on his face. However, Mech respond to him. Only endless bombardment. Rumble. The muzzles of the guns were raised one by one. They began to store energy and fill up, and the smell of gunpowder smoke began to permeate. Countless heavy artillery roared, falling with missiles and dragging a long flame tail. It looks scary, dude. You're crazy. It's just killing someone. The battle is too big. Deadpool is in a bad mood. The reality is like someone forcing you to hey. Since you can't resist, you can only enjoy it. Xiao Jianjian is quite proficient in bad literature. Just when he was gritting his teeth, letting the missiles ravage him and half close his eyes. In a daze, it seemed to see a graceful figure. Wonderful, beauty, and very familiar. It was like when he dreamed back at midnight, the figure he had dreamed of countless times. It is also the activation of super ability, the supreme goddess he saw when he was hovering on the edge of death. But goddess this time seems a little grumpy. Xiao Jianjian scratched his head, a little uncertain. Vaguely, a graceful voice slowly formed behind Deadpool. Obviously, it's just a phantom, but it has an indescribable temperament, as if it surpasses the mirror universe. With an arrogance that cannot be ignored. When she appeared, she seemed to be the center of the universe, and all eyes couldn't help but focus on her. Who is it? Stealing my authority, stepping out of nothingness. Opening the mouth is Wang Jia. A terrifying atmosphere swept across the audience. A gray halo spread, and the surface of the silver-white mecha was instantly stained with rust, as if it had been eroded by death and completely lost its light. Not only the appearance, but even the structure and parts inside are constantly decaying. Boom, boom, boom. One after another, they fell down continuously. Death God. Observers' pupils constrict. One of the 5 creation gods of the universe. He definitely knows. Except for Uncle Tun's special situation where the force is too low, the low is too low, and it is almost becoming a combat power measurement unit. Several others. They are all terrifying existences one by one. Above the multi-universe, the figure spreads across countless dimensions. Not so much a strong one. It's more like a concept, even some kind of unchangeable rule in the universe. And the god of death? He is the abstract deity born from the infinite existence of the creator multi-universe. The source, creator, and manipulator of all life souls in the universe. It represents, in all universes, the visualization of the specific form of the end of all life. In all the myths, the king of hell, the lord of hell, the creator and master of various death god concepts, represents the ultimate concrete image of the entire universe. Z. It's a concept-level horror boss. He actually appeared. The face of the observer changed suddenly. This is not the kind of force that devours the ground. It is one of the real, 5 creation gods. SCP-2935. What the hell are those abnormalities? The observer recalled the roar of the god of death just now, and suddenly panicked. It was able to attract this big guy. The upper limit of the storage seems to be far more terrifying than he imagined. In the fleet group that is rapidly leaping towards the Earth. D. Goddess. Thanos' eyes lit up. In an instant, he changed from the overlord of the universe to the appearance of licking a dog. Fine. In the largest fleet, there is no one else but him, and the image of the overlord of the universe can still be kept. It actually appeared. Thanos stared at the screen, his eyes never blinking. His eyes stared at the picture in a dazed way, and his eyes greedily stayed on the figure of death. The eyeballs were almost glued to it. Equal death. The end of all things. Thanos whispered. His heart that was about to move was almost uncontrollable. Notify the entire fleet. Abandon the defensive cover and move forward at full speed. All energy should be given priority to the power system of the spacecraft. An impatient roar rang out. Whoosh! The speed of the spaceship was already on the verge of limit. Under the weight of Thanos, it speeded up again. The curvature engine is almost rubbing sparks. Earth. Kamartaj, Holy Land. Death God. Ancient One had a serious expression on his face. Fortunately, she listened to and accompanied the eternal great God. And having a contact with the 5 great gods, she knew their horror well. But the state of the Death God seems a bit wrong. It's not like the all-inclusive concept of eternity that she saw when she was walking in the astral world. More like, after splitting a certain force, projecting it in the real dimension, it appears after downgrading. A certain aspect of the great god of death, a projection in the universe. Ancient One murmured in a low voice. Inadvertently, most of the situation has been guessed. But even so, Ancient One is still not underestimated, or they have no right to underestimate them. In any case, he is also the god of death, one of the 5 creation gods, and the projection of the supreme existence beyond the universe. The real combat power is absolutely beyond imagination. Without external intervention, how can the power within the rules fight against the existence outside the rules, even the existence of the rules? Odin stared slightly. That's how things are going. He had already given up struggling, and the Nordic god king sat on the ground, like an old man in his twilight years, quietly waiting for the ending to come. Resist? It's just meaningless stuff. Mommy FK. Is there no one who can get rid of her? At least it's good to stop it. Nick Fury's face was as gloomy as water, and his eyes were cloudy. It is different from the awe and fear of the cosmic powerhouses and those top bosses. Braised eggs are very practical. Deadpool, that is to say, Shout Jian, who has never been beaten to death, suddenly appeared behind him, an existence that looked extremely terrifying and smashed a group of mech when he appeared on the stage. Obviously not a kind person, the terrifying gray mist spread, constantly destroying the mechs on the field. This is the passive aura of his appearance. Deadpool was already unbeatable. After the Death God appeared, it became more difficult to solve. But once Deadpool or the newly emerged beings get out of SCP-2935, Nick Fury's pupils shrank. His back was sweating coldly, and the price of terror was beyond his imagination. A universe will face death, especially with several lessons learned from the past. Braised egg definitely will not naively think that the universe he lives in will be an accident. Damn, absolutely don't let him out. Nick Fury gritted his teeth, his expression gloomy. He is on the outside. I can only watch the situation develop helplessly, unable to deal with it at all. The newly appeared goddess. Really, it's too scary. The mecha is no match at all. You don't even need to make a move. The passive spread of power is enough to destroy all the mechs. Once the mecha is gone, after losing the power to stop, there is no one to stop Deadpool from going out by then. What if in the mirror universe, the invisible Death God appeared after him again? A hole! Nick Fury slapped the table angrily. The thick 1,000-plywood board has been pressed down by him. Watch the screen progress. It was like waiting for the death sentence to come. Director, something is wrong. There seems to be something wrong. The voice of Phil Coulson broke the solemn atmosphere in the meeting room. Nick Fury, bowing his head angrily. Look in the direction Phil Coulson is pointing. Soon, he found a scene that he will never forget. Mirror Universe. Who stole my authority? Dressed in a black robe like a black veil, she wrapped her body, and inside was a tattooed skeleton that resembled Skull. When the goddess of death came this time, she used this posture. An angry growl sounded. A gray aura emanated from her body. Soon, countless mechas will decay from the outside to the inside. Or in other words, the body will die, just as countless people thought. The situation is about to settle down like this. After all, how can some mechanical bodies fight against the gods of creation? Then it is just a conceptual projection. However, the most indispensable thing in the world is always accidents. Invisible wave spread. A bright light suddenly sprouted from the fallen mechs one by one. The dim light is like fireflies in the night sky, and a little bit of glimmer is inconspicuous. But after gathering millions of rays of light one by one, they gradually became impossible to ignore. That's right, Menial. The mecha troop manufactured by Tony is indeed only a few thousand mechas. This has already squeezed Stark Industry dry. It is the limit of what he can do, but the number of thousands is obviously not mechas. Troop limit. Occupied the Foundation's underground base. The resources inside are being swallowed, and the production line is constantly expanding outwards. There are also countless resources, which are constantly being transported and loaded inside. More than half of the mechas are on the production line, constantly producing outward. One can imagine how terrifying the sum must be. Let go of the restrictions completely, and the speed of the ever-proliferating mechs has skyrocketed. The speed of the explosive soldiers is not inferior to that of the interstellar Zerg, one after another rushing towards death. Under normal circumstances, it's just moths to the flame, meaningless things. Didn't you see that God of Death didn't even raise his head, and has been studying the anomalies of the universe to find out who is stealing her authority? DJI, these mechs are not normal. Tony is in the mech unit, but he stuffed a machine with a completion program infection. Completion, the vast white light floating out of the mecha, seemed to be singing the same content. Gather water into a river. Countless voices echoed and resounded endlessly around, like some kind of mysterious hymn. The death god was finally alarmed by the abnormality. Looking up from the research, I cast my gaze over, wanting to see what these ants are doing. However, when she focused her eyes, what I saw was a vast brilliance. In the indescribable brilliance of divinity, it seems to be witnessing a multi-dimensional world caged by machines. Click. Every time the gear turns, it is seamless, and it is promoting the operation of the multi-dimensional world, the ultimate beyond machines. On the abyss, order and law are woven. Forge every law of physics with your own hands, so that everything can run in an orderly manner. He is Lord of clockwork and gears. It is also the source of endless wisdom and knowledge. Chapter 095, God of Death. So, I'm a false god? What? The God of Death frowned. The figure under the black cloak had a dignified expression, as the original creation god beyond the multi-universe. Even if it's just a power projection, there shouldn't be anything in this world that she can't see through. But, in front of you, these light spots floating out from the mecha, but it made her feel mysterious. It's obviously just a group of ants, like light, but when the number continues to gather, it becomes extremely dazzling. It's like tiny gears that together complement and form some kind of huge machine. When the quantity exceeds a certain level, actually ushered in the sublimation of nature. From her disdain for ants to an existence that cannot be ignored. Impossible. The thought of fear just arose and was thrown out of my mind by the death god. She is a god of creation, and there are only a handful of people who can stand shoulder to shoulder with her. A guy who has never heard of it can actually be comparable to her in essence, and even make her pay attention and fear? Joke. The death god's expression turned cold. On the skull-like face, there was the arrogance of the original gods. Mechanical, It's just a ridiculous human trick. The death god's eyes were slightly cold, with a bit of anger on his face. I don't know if it's because I'm ashamed and resentful of my previous fears. Still angry that an unknown god dared to act arrogantly in front of her. Farce should be silent in the abyss forever. The god of death's expression turned cold. She descended from nothingness and projected into this weird universe. Not to play with a bunch of mechanical toys, but to find Buhei, who stole her authority. The entire cosmic dimension died without warning, but it did not turn into her power. Even if it wasn't triggered by the perception on Deadpool, she wouldn't even know what happened to 680. This is an intolerable thief to the power of death she wields. Mechanical? God, oomph. Never heard of it. The god of death's eyes turned cold, and he was completely moved with killing intent. I plan to get rid of this annoying ant as soon as possible, and then concentrate on searching to find out the invisible thief. The god of death tapped with his fingertips. As the projection of the power of the creation god, her attack has no bells and whistles. It's just a simple concept. It looks unpretentious, even a little too simple. Point out, the concept of endless death surges forward like a tide, with the power of death that would bring everything in the world, even the universe originally, to an end. Irresistible, irreversible. Conceptually, it has surpassed what energy can describe. The overlords of the universe, the top powerhouses, and the immortals under this kind of power will usher in rapid decline, and their lifespan will slip into the abyss when they enter their twilight years and cannot resist. As long as they are within the circle, no matter how powerful the individual is, they cannot break free from the shackles of the rules. It's just like a person in a bottle can never grow beyond the bottle originally. Dest. Countless people in the exposed video couldn't help but gasp. I didn't expect the god of death to be so ruthless. Starting is a big move. Leave no stone unturned. Watching helplessly, the last ray of hope in the universe is about to go out under the shroud of death. Many people, I couldn't help but close my eyes. And many more, sitting on the ground in despair. However, just when the pessimistic atmosphere continued to spread on the earth like a virus. In despair, there seems to be a ray of light. The brilliance of the mecha gathered together. The most central mecha began to be integrated by countless gears. Swish, countless mechanical structures extended from behind him, turning into mechanical wings. Wings filled with metal texture reflect strange brilliance in the sunlight, and there is a divinity flowing in the center, pouring into it, covering the sky and blocking the sun. Even the sun is blocked, the true face of the completion program. Finally revealed. Now, Tet. No, it should be called him. The messy metal is smelted into a handle with huge amounts of metal scepter, which is held in his hand, and the tip is an object similar to a gear machine, which is inlaid at the front end, symbolizing the concept. Ascension, broken god, return from the broken, the god of clockwork and gears, symbolizing the supreme divinity of order and reason. Facing the concept shock of the death god, he just lifted the scepter slightly and then pointed forward. Click! The gears at the top of the scepter turned slowly. It seems to be touching the multiverse. The invisible wave blooms, the concept of death that sweeps over everything and affects the universe. And the sound of gears turning actually stopped. It seemed to be clamped by some invisible, huge machinery, and the pause was forcibly pressed. This, impossible. The god of death screamed in shock. She couldn't believe at all that a shabby god she had never heard of could block her conceptual attack. The key is, other side, clearly just returned from a broken one. Recasting the godhead, divinity, and power are far from back to their peak. Just this level. How could he easily block her attack? This is impossible. The skull face under the black cloak of the death god was full of disbelief. Same. There are not a few people in the universe who are as shocked as her, especially the top powerhouse who knew the horror of the death god, the overlord of the universe. All stared wide-eyed. What exactly is he? The observer's pupils trembled, and his face was filled with horror. Unimaginable. In the universe, there actually exists Who can compete with the death god? This exists. Seems to be just aggregated from a bunch of mechs. The observer suddenly feels that reality is absurd. When will a group of mechanical creations be able to touch porcelain with the five gods? Science? Is it really that strong? The observer stares blankly at the screen, falling into deep self-doubt. SHIELD. What the hell? Thor, Tony, you made these. You? Are you exaggerating too much? Meeting room. Everyone gasped, involuntarily turning his head to look at Tony next to him. Their gazes turned into stares. Too strong. Can actually create a mecha that can have an AL relationship with the death god? It's outrageous. In a short time, just now, they already knew the concept of the great death god from Ancient One through Doctor Strange. It is precisely because I know that I feel shocked. Humanity, it actually competes with the Lord of Death God in concept, and it is also the kind of multi-universe level, and looks like it still has the upper hand. It's too awesome. Please, don't look at me like that. It's none of my business. The corner of Tony's mouth twitched. He didn't recite it. Joke, he is just a weak, pitiful, and helpless scientist. How can he have such power against the sky? At most, he designed a set of mecha programs. These are messy. Mecha, divinity, and that mechanical god who looks impressive. Tony doesn't even have a good impression. He didn't even draw the relevant sketches. Same with Doctor Strange in them. It was also the first time for him to see the appearance of the mechanical god. At most, those complimentary hymns sounded familiar to Tony, as if he had heard them vaguely in his sleep often. Could it be, in the mirror dimension, the future you did it? Doctor Strange frowned. Another possibility was proposed. Maybe it is. Dr. Banner nodded, representing the thoughts of many people. Just when everyone in the Avengers Alliance was discussing the possibility. On the exposure screen, finally something new has appeared. The pure color is pitch black, and the projection like paper cutting appears in the picture. Countless gear machines surround him, exudes a radiance that cannot be desecrated. Right next to it, the metal crisscrossed, as if there was a terrifying existence sealed inside. Just watching from a distance through the screen will make people feel that the body is distorted, as if instinctively evolving toward the sun. Surrounded by ink smudges, forming lines of text. The broken god personality, supreme divinity. The broken gods meet, the supreme divinity worshipped, the gods who control machinery and electronics, weave order and law on the abyss, forge every physical law, and make everything run. Teaching human logic and rationality is the source of endless wisdom and knowledge, close to omniscience and omnipresence, spread across countless dimensions. At the cost of breaking itself, it sealed Debosi, who is also the supreme divinity, under the silver net. The broken god, Ancient One's pupils constricted. Her expression suddenly changed, not only because of the supreme divinity in the content. It is a silhouette that flashes by in the picture. The scarlet light and shadow and the countless metal crisscross grids made Gu feel his heart being held tightly by Invisible's big hand. Aldabas, another supreme divinity. The voice of Ancient One is extremely hoarse, like the friction sound of old metal. It was as if an invisible mountain suddenly came down. Indescribable pressure. It made her feel inexplicably heavy and a little out of breath. Ancient One, Odin turned his head, with a bit of worry in his eyes. The two of them could be said to be suffering brothers and sisters, living in the 9 realms together, and they are natural allies. For the state of Ancient One, Odin definitely worried. No, it's okay. Ancient One covered his right eye with his hand. His expression was a bit ferocious, and he was sweating continuously. It's like suffering terrible pain. You look like this, it doesn't look like you're not heavy. Odin sighed inwardly, but Ancient One obviously didn't want him to intervene, and Odin would not intervene forcefully. His eyes paused slightly. Keep doubts in your heart. Both of them ignored the accident very tacitly. Act like nothing happened. The broken god, that mechanical god, is it so terrifying? The observer's face changed slightly. He originally thought that the protagonist of this containment should be the terrifying SCP, 2935. Did not expect. Short time. Accidents happen one after another. First, the god of death, the god of creation, appeared on the stage. And then again, the gathering of divinity born in the machine. The key is, this god of brokenness, which has never been heard before, is actually fighting head-to-head with the god of death. Don't say anything. The god of death is just a projection, not full power at all. The broken god. It's also just returned from being broken, and it's 108,000 miles away from the heyday. The divine brilliance, composed of some mechas, can compete with the death god, and obscurely has the upper hand. It is simply unimaginable how terrifying he must be in his prime. And such a terrifying mechanical supreme god. Actually, at the cost of breaking himself, he sealed another one, the supreme divinity Ada bus in the silver net. Look at the posture. There is never more than one supreme divinity. The broken god is not the strongest in this class at all. At least Aldabus is slightly stronger than him. Supreme divinity? What the hell is this existence? The observer's deep voice was indescribably heavy. Among the numerous abnormalities in SCP, the content leaked from the tip of the iceberg is really too terrifying. Supreme divinity. The target is very likely to be the creation god, or even a higher existence. Supreme divinity? Collector pouted, dismissing the picture on the screen. He has countless kinds of strange collections under his hands, but the only one who has never heard of the broken god. What a gear god. The god of rules. All children's tricks. Maybe it's a civilization on the surface, civilization that can't even go out of the galaxy. It seems that this wonderful collection is going to be missed. Collector shook his head regretfully. In his opinion, with the action of the death god, everything has been settled. The death god, an invisible, will definitely be easily found out by the death god and then easily resolved. As for the broken god, what kind of little Kayla is that? In front of the creation gods, isn't she easily destroyed? For point 7, don't make trouble. When will a false god believed by the natives on the surface be able to compete with the creation god? Mech machinery or something. Only galactic civilizations like to use those toys. Laugh, too naive. Collector sneered. Condescending attitude. It is the usual arrogance of the ancients. However, next moment, the scene in the picture made him fall off the stage directly. A picture beyond imagination. He fell off his seat in shock. But Collector ignored the pain and embarrassment and stared straight ahead. His face was full of disbelief. This is impossible. It's obviously just some broken copper and rotten iron. Excited voices, with vibrato, kept echoing in the hall. Mirror universe. It's just a fake god. There was a cold light on the stern face of the death god. On attack. Was it actually blocked by the ants in her eyes? For her arrogant personality, this is simply a great shame. Unforgivable. The god of death became completely serious. She wants to use absolute death to wash away the insult she just received. A mere false god. He dares to face my brilliance. The power of endless death poured out. All are the purest concept of death. Even if it is just a projection, after the power explodes completely, it is enough to pull a universe to sink and go to ruins. The power that can bring a universe to an end is all pressing towards the god of brokenness. And his response, he just raised the scepter in his hand again. Crack. The tip gear turns. The broken god finally raised his weapon. Chapter 096. Distorted Cause and Effect. The Xianyuan sword that shocked the multi-universe. Crack. The sound of gears turning sounded at the tip. The broken god stepped forward coldly. But the posture seems a bit strange. The handle is held upside down. It's not like holding a scepter. Rather like, carry a hammer, forged from steel, the purest and most terrifying war hammer. Pick up the hammer and hit the mole. As for who is the gopher, think of it as death before the broken god. Next, countless creatures in the universe. They jointly witnessed a scene that surprised them. The scepter, which originally symbolized authority and status, was held in the hands of the broken god like a steel hammer. Roll up your cuffs. Hang Chi blasted the hammer towards death. A mere false god. Stop it. Caught off guard, The god of death who had been hammered all over his head was almost turning green. She is a god of creation. To be beaten so embarrassingly by a wild god who came out of nowhere. Court death. The god of death roared angrily. Terrifying power continuously bloomed on her body, turning into a dark gray halo and sweeping outward. Dark gray light. The richness is like essence, as if it is about to gather into a liquid and drip. Flowers, air, even the soil and space are beginning to be forced to wither. Two. After facing the broken god, what is ushered in is still a steady and rhythmic heavy hammer. Millions of mecha troops. After the appearance of the broken god, the proliferation rate has exceeded the threshold, and the reenactment has doubled. Just a moment. It has become tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. The entire planet under his feet was about to be squeezed dry. Countless mechas complement each other to form this incomparably terrifying mecha god. The awakened power of the broken god. It has reached a level beyond imagination. No matter how death explodes, it is still within the control of the broken god. Boom! There is a muffled, loud noise, hitting the death god one after another. For countless spectators outside the stadium, the same beat in their hearts. The little boy was stunned by the giant hammer. Then, the people who were staring at melon-eating people saw a scene that was shocking. Sledgehammer 80, small hammer 50, just hammer after hammer. The broken god and the death god launched a chase and escape contest. Then, under the hammer, the god of death was smashed to death. Energy is consumed over and over again. The projection began to become more and more illusory and finally fell under a blow of the hammer. Wave, there was a sound like bubbles breaking. When it comes on stage, the mighty death was just like that, lightly crushed by the god of brokenness. Wave, when defeated, the death of one of the 5 creation gods, like a soap bubble being popped. The fragility makes one speechless. Not, is it over? I'll FK'd up. Isn't the broken god too hung up? What kind of bullshit are the 5 great gods? They're very famous, but they're actually a little BCH. Not worth mentioning. Not worth mentioning. Technology is the best. Now, start the cyber era. You all charge with me. Countless people exploded in an instant. The happiest thing is the people who eat melons. This is a shocking melon. Witnessing such an epic event with one's own eyes is definitely the kind that people will never forget. It was so shocking. Many technological civilizations are rejoicing. Turn on the video recorder with the best effect in civilization and record these precious video images permanently. And put it into the secret library of civilization and become the end of the world. Countless interstellar merchants saw the business opportunity, recorded videos one after another, and began to sell them in a big way. The dark history of the death god quietly spread to the universe like this. Lost. The god of death lost? How is this possible? Collector's pupil shrank. The heterochromatic skin on his body almost changed color from fright. Even if you are well-informed, his long lifespan allowed him to witness the prosperity and decline of countless civilizations. All kinds of things, and I have seen countless. But see the picture in the exposure screen. Collector couldn't help but widen his eyes. The death of one of the 5 gods. He actually lost to a mechanical god that he had never heard of before, and still in such an indecent form. This is too outrageous. As for why Collector didn't doubt the authenticity of the video content this time, joke, who would spread rumors and dare to bring the god of death together? Do you really think that god of creation, who often appears in the form of a woman, will be a magnanimous and kind person? As for hiding from them, the matter is so big. For them, how could they ignore the humiliation of naming names? God of death. So far, no response. The death gods of all dimensions have not started to counterattack the Earth, so it can only prove one thing. Exposure video is real. What happens in the mirror universe is real. Death. Collector couldn't help but gasped. Be careful, your liver trembles. The broken god, supreme divinity. What kind of existence is this? Even the creator god. Collectors look complicated. The fear in his eyes gradually turned into awe. The battle of the century. Cosmic Wars. Gao Tianzuan had a nostalgic look on his face. This kind, a top-notch matchup beyond imagination. For him, an ancient man who is obsessed with duels, is definitely a feast beyond imagination. It doesn't matter whether the battle is intense or not. The status of the two parties, together with the uncountable number of viewers, is enough to push this duel to the top. Party, God of Creation, -55, Supreme Divinity, or the God of Broken defeated the God of Death with a crushing advantage. This is definitely a feast for duelists in the level universe. Gao Tianzuan's face was full of excitement. The follow-up impact on the universe of the people who eat melons properly is nothing compared to the happiness at the moment. For these ancients who have a long life and have witnessed countless years. Somehow, hobby, harder than death. Supreme Divinity. The observer's tone is faint, and his expression is very dignified. He was completely shocked by the terrifying gold content of the Supreme Divinity. Beyond imagination, indescribable, can easily suppress the projection of the Death God. That is to say, the other party is at least the existence of the original universe level, and may even be higher. The observer's eyes are deep. I can't help but think of the horror when the three dead brothers appeared on the stage. Could it be? Is the Supreme Divinity all such terrifying existences? The observer's throat was a little choked. Short time. There are more than 3 Supreme Divinities. Teleph. These existences are not uncommon in SCPs. The observer swallowed. The SCP and its contents are probably more terrifying than I imagined. The water is too deep here. He seemed a little out of control. SHIELD, there was silence in the meeting room, and the sound was lost. They were so shocked that they were speechless. The broken god is mighty. Let everyone refresh the 3 views. Even Nick Fury kept his mouth shut for the time being, and FK Xia failed to attack. Primordial universe, beyond the infinite void of the multi-universe. No increase, no decrease, a mysterious place that cannot be described in words. Her whole body was shrouded in pitch black, with deep lines appearing on her body surface. Her existence was the source of countless death concepts. The real body of the death god. She closed her eyes and fell asleep, waiting for the end of all things to return to her body and become a part of the power. A whole. The god of death suddenly opened his eyes. Soaring anger burst out of her. As the anger in her heart erupted, the surrounding death breath became extremely strong. In a blink, it spreads to several dimensions. The concept of death in her spills into other dimensions. Soon there were 2 universes ushered in the erosion of death, and most of the universes were heading for heat, death, and destruction. Countless creatures died under her wrath. But the god of death didn't care at all. There is only infinite anger in my heart. Broken, of God, in a cold tone, one word at a time, bursting out with infinite murderous intent. Her projection, a projection representing where her will lies, was actually killed by an unknown wild god, and still such a humiliating process. The big hammer is 80, the small hammer is 40, across infinite dimensions in time and space. She seemed to be able to feel the hammer hammering again and again. It was completely crushing her dignity into the dust. Unforgivable. The death god was intertwined with infinite anger. After the shock of a volcanic eruption, there is still unspeakable fear. That guy called the Supreme Divinity. She just came back from being broken, and with the support of tens of millions of mechas, she was able to crush one of her projections and still kill her with such a domineering posture. The terrifying strength of the opponent is self-evident. A deep intuition. It comes from the instinctive perception of danger from the creator gods. The god of death even sensed a power that made her fearful in the other party. Over her death, it is a more terrifying existence than her personality. No, impossible. Absolutely impossible. I am the 5 creation gods. Even if it's eternity, it's nothing more than mere heresy. It's just an alien god. How could it overwhelm me? The god of death shrank his pupils, and his face was extremely ugly. I'm the one with the highest personality. He is just a projection for me with a geographical advantage. The god of death had a gloomy face. Keep opening your mouth to make amends. Find excuses for yourself to fail, and lose if you lose. As one of the original gods, the arrogant god of death absolutely cannot admit that with such a humiliating gesture, he lost in the hands of the opponent. It's all about projection. If her real body came, she would definitely be killed in an instant. What bullshit, the broken god. It's just because the power of her projection belt is too little. So she missed a little and lost a little, although the mouth is very disdainful. But the movements in the hands of the death god are not vague at all. The power of terror blooms. Countless multi-universes have been affected. The power compressed to the extreme formed the most powerful blow of the concept of death in her hands, trying to lock onto the mirror universe where the broken god resides. Directly launch a crushing attack to completely eliminate the possibility of the opponent's growth. However, the loss of death in the hands of the death god has not yet been thrown from his hands. She widened her eyes first. A ghostly ghost emanated from the skull under the black cloak. It was like seeing something unexpected. Even her, the aloof creation god, was shocked and stopped. The loss of death compressed to the extreme in his hand also began to gradually shatter and disappear with the agitation of his mind. Only one sentence remains, constantly echoing in the empty space. What's this? Crack, crack. The gears kept turning. After losing 387 enemies, driven by the broken god, countless machines began to proliferate crazily. It's not just mecha production. Even the surrounding matter is distorted by the divine brilliance of the broken god, instinctively transforming into a mechanical aspect. Soon, the mirror universe is about to become a complete mechanical universe, assimilated into the realm of the broken god. The ever-proliferating machinery even began to throw light into SCP-29B5. It seems to want to come to reality through that cave. The invaded mirror universe is not enough. Even the real universe, he does not want to give up. C. A terrifying HK-class doomsday. Ascension catastrophe is about to erupt on the Earth. In the sky of the mirror universe. Sudden change. Boom. The space seemed to be cut open abruptly. An empty void. Forcing huge amounts of shadows, it stands out against a cloudless sky. Roughly cylindrical and has a medical ball. The length is about 33 meters and the diameter is about 1 meter. From a macro perspective, it looks like a sword that has been enlarged countless times. Zoom out. It looks like an ancient bronze sword, but it appears to bear slight signs of heat damage. And it seems to have been damaged by some kind of blunt force, breaking it into 3 large fragments and 38 small fragments. Surrounding the cylinder like stars holding the moon, it also seems to be a group of meteorite belts circling around a small planet. Not just one of the same cylinders, but a full 6 handles. It looks exactly the same in all aspects, like a creation that has been engraved one-to-one, interlacing each other in the sky, forming a formation of 4 in a row. SCP-2481-2, or call it another name, Xianyuan Sword. Click. The broken god raised his head when he sensed something was wrong when the Xianyuan Sword first appeared. Look at the utensils made of beryllium bronze alloy in the sky. His ancient has no waves in his eyes. For the first time, there were fluctuations. No hesitation. The hammer that was put down in his hand was raised again, trying to take the initiative to attack. However, the speed of Xianyuan's sword. In other words, Lin Xiu's reaction was obviously faster than not. When exchanging Xianyuan sword to attack, the attack has already been locked on the target and smashed down. But the direction of the attack, not the body of the broken god, but behind him, there are countless machines all over the world. Call out. Xianyuan swords fell like meteors. Terrifying power poured out. No, the broken god made a sound for the first time, roars similar to a mechanical sound. However, after his angry growl, the originally majestic and vast body, like a mechanical god, began to distort, as if to become an illusory bubble. Disillusionment disappears. Chapter 097, Xianyuan Sword, the Xia Dynasty, the supreme artifact that distorts cause and effect. The principle of Xianyuan is not to destroy. In fact, its form, wisdom, beginning and end, cause and effect are removed so that it does not exist. SCP 2481-2 Xianyuan Sword. Invisible's undulating bloom. The power of Xianyuan's sword exploded in an instant. For a powerful and supreme divinity like the Broken God, the power of the Xianyuan sword may not have a final effect, and it is likely to be affected by the divinity, resulting in damage to the power. So, from a beginning to the end, Lin Xiu never set his target on the Broken God. Instead, aimed directly at his base crystal. From the root, erased the reliance of his existence. Xianyuan Sword, the Xia Dynasty, the supreme artifact that distorts cause and effect. 5 Xianyuan Swords, falling from space one by one, throwing in the direction where the mecha group is located, shattering countless voids, spanning infinite distances, distorting cause and effect, and negating the existence of mechas from the root. Volatility keeps blooming. The mech groups disappeared one by one. The distorted ripples on the Broken God are getting bigger and bigger. No, the Broken God, who sensed something was wrong, let out a roar. But it's too late. What happened in the blink of an eye caught people off guard. Xianyuan's sword exploded in an instant. Distort cause and effect, completely wiped out the traces of the existence of the mecha. From the root, deny their existence, and the Broken God, which was pieced together because of the completion program, definitely has no support for its existence. The light and shadow are distorted. From a real God, it was reversed into an illusory bubble, like an afterimage on an old tape. As it goes on track, is cleaned and erased away. Broken God, disappear in the empty mirror universe. Quiet began to return, but compared with the environment where machinery and gears were flooded and reduced to a mechanical domain, and the sound of gears was everywhere. Now the dead environment. It always makes people feel a kind of inexplicable absurdity. Taste, that's it. Gao Tianzuan was a little shocked and aphasia. His brain couldn't react to the sudden change in front of him. I thought the Broken God was brave enough. I didn't expect anyone to be stronger than him. Who is this general? This is what keeps echoing in Gao Tianzuan's mind. The supreme divinity known as the Broken God. Treating the projection of the god of death like a gopher with a hammer, he easily eliminated her. The domineering attitude has already made countless people regard the god of brokenness as the pioneer of machinery, and countless technological civilizations have begun to worship him as the supreme god. Result: turn around. Several huge amounts of cylinders fell down. Less than a moment. Let the Broken God receive the lunchbox. 99% of the people who surrounded the screen and stared at the development of the situation didn't realize what happened. Blink. The Broken God, who looked down upon him, was defeated, whether it is expulsion or sealing or suppression and killing. But the Broken God is gone. It is an indisputable fact. Hit by this sudden attack, he disappeared into the mirror universe, and even the traces of his existence were wiped clean. In the end, who the hell? Gao Tianzuan's pupils shrank, and he felt terrified at the forces behind the power. That's right, because of his long life, he opened the cosmic arena, pursues excitement from duels, and the immortal who likes crazy battles the most, unexpectedly also felt fear. Deep down, frightened by terrifying power. There are endless doubts in my heart. Foundation. Definitely the Foundation. Ancient One and Odin, their eyes met. The same conclusions were reached by coincidence, and they were all resolute and extremely certain. Foundation. In every organization, they know, only the Foundation has the ability to make such a big scene, can suddenly pull out an unknown powerful force to suppress the god of brokenness. And only the Foundation meets this standard. Not to mention, the situation just now is exactly in line with the purpose of the Foundation's propaganda. We control, we contain, we protect. The direct consequence of the recovery of the Broken God is that the mirror universe is occupied, and the ever-expanding mechanical bodies try to erode the real universe they are in. If the broken god succeeds, whether the real universe is ruled by the broken god or the power in SCP-2935 is leaked, it will be a devastating blow to the world. It is also reasonable for the Foundation to make a move definitely. It will be strange not to shoot. His movement. It seems a bit too strong. Odin couldn't help swallowing and couldn't help but glance at his Kunganir. Instinctively compare weapons together. However, the result definitely can't bear to look directly. It is not a product of one level at all. Foundation. How strong are their foundations? Odin's voice is hoarse, and his expression is abnormal, an endless stream of whole cards. Can't see the limit. This level of organization is still suspected to be in a state of dilapidated reconstruction. Then how strong should he be in his prime? Odin said he couldn't imagine it all. Ancient One also shook his head. We are speechless. There is only endless silence and a deep awe that rises in my heart. Xinyuan's sword? Collector's eyes glazed over. SCP-2481-2 appears above the sky. No need to know. As long as you look at them, the corresponding names will appear in your mind. If this can only be regarded as some interesting little tricks, then Xinyuan's sword's gesture of erasing the broken god is enough to make countless people lose their minds in horror. Reverse cause and effect. Deny the root cause. Deny the foundation of existence from the ground up. It's like dealing with people. First cut your ancestors from the source and directly eliminate the possibility of your birth. The effect is too brutal. This is the real treasure. Collector's eyes are blurred. It's like when a moron sees a beautiful woman. His eyeballs are almost straightened. He suddenly felt that the collections he was proud of all over the room had become meaningless, no matter how valuable it is. Compared with Xinyuan's sword, it is not worth mentioning in an instant. Totally a bunch of junk. Collector? Compared with the things contained by the Foundation, I am simply a scavenger. Hey, sure enough, it's still so unfathomable. Nick Fury sighed, his voice inexplicably heavy. This terrifying organization has no upper limit at all, and it is simply unimaginably powerful. Braised Egg looked around. The expressions of the others were indeed similar. They all frowned, their faces extremely serious. Fear, horror. Professor X's eyes were filled with horror. Fine. Because there is no support from national forces, their mutant actions are a little slower. Did not have time to enter SCP-2935. Otherwise, the tragic consequences can be imagined. Professor X was completely shocked by the horror of Xinyuan's sword. Even the top mutant can't resist this power. From the root, to deny your existence. What's the use of super ability, no matter how strong it is? Unless you can travel through time and space. Make sure that the past can always be stable and not be affected by the power of Xinyuan's sword. Not to mention whether it can be done. Even if it can be done, so how can you be sure that the Foundation has no other means of targeting? The endless technologies have long established an invincible image monument in the hearts of countless people. Hell, Mephisto gasped. The half of the foot that had just stepped towards the earth was instantly withdrawn at a rapid speed. Cold sweat dripped down his back. The demon was also frightened into a cold sweat. Joke. There's the Foundation, the giant station on Earth. He didn't dare to stir up wind and rain while the Foundation was making a move. If this organization dedicated to protecting human beings considers him a dangerous factor, it will be dealt with by the way. Then Mephisto must not cry to death. He doesn't think that he can hang himself more than the broken god. He doesn't even dare to touch porcelain, the god of death. In the universe, there is such a power. Thanos' pupil earthquake. Purple sweet potato essence couldn't hide her shock. He has recovered from the grief that the goddess was killed, but the scene in front of him caused huge amounts of shock in his heart. Perhaps plans should be ahead. Thanos looked solemn, and the Infinity Gauntlet Snapfinger plan was once again on the agenda. With deep eyes, he stayed at the position of the Earth on the star map for a long time, and finally moved away from the target, looking at the other corner of the star map, where the soul gem is. At least, it should also take back a gem first. His current strength. In a turbulent universe, it's already a bit insufficient. Whoosh. Countless fleets turned their course, and the tail flames were in the void box. When it breaks, it breaks. This is the basic quality of a hero. A Xianyuan sword. A theory of Xianyuan, reversing cause and effect, denying the root of the emperor. It caused the shock and fear of countless powerhouses in the entire multi-universe. Make them too. Feel the horror of being dominated by the Foundation again. The huge shadow named Foundation has spread from the Earth to the universe. Countless people, regardless of strength, regardless of status. There's only a deep sense of awe. The overriding posture, in the eyes of many people, is already in the position of the creation god, or even higher. And Lin Xiu, who personally caused all this, clearly know nothing about these. Or, even if he knew, he wouldn't care about such foreign evaluation. He is very busy now. Shu a Xianyuan sword is projected into reality. The pressure on Lin Xiu is not without it. In addition to the large consumption of exposure points, the burden of using Xianyuan sword is just as terrifying. To know, this is a lesson learned. Xiao Wenming, who was in great prosperity for a while, was fighting against the Golden Crow, continuously urging the 9 Xianyuan swords to fire, and the power penetrates the sky, shatters the multiple elements, and the Golden Crow ceases to exist. At the same time, Xiao Chao himself was also affected by the power of a Xianyuan sword because of the fire, causing the entire Xia civilization to be annihilated and disappeared in the long river of history. It has become an unknowable past. If it weren't for the subsequent excavation of SCP-2481, and the corresponding containment objects appeared one after another, even the authenticity of Xiao Wenming was once known suspect. 9 swords are fired in succession. The color of the world changes, like a fire burning the body. If the Golden Crow does not exist, Xiao will also receive it. Except for me stealing life with a broken sword, everything is ashes. At the moment, merchants don't know Xia. They think they're God strange. SCP-2481-2 TSK, it's okay. Lin Xiu smacked his lips, his slightly nervous heart finally relaxed. It is because the modules of the Foundation-related organizations are activated. So Lin Xiu found that the things he could exchange included the Xianyuan sword in Xiao Wenming. The famous artifact of Zhongfen, Lin Xiu has definitely heard of it. For this surprise, the effect is absolutely awesome. However, he was worried about the tragic end of the Xia dynasty. So Lin Xiu didn't dare to invest too much and used 5 handles cautiously. Fortunately, big success. Let the broken god who just ascended to the gods appear. Before he could recover, 5 consecutive swords shattered the foundation of his existence and smashed into nothingness again. If the broken god had time to speak, absolutely shout. Young people don't talk about martial arts and they bully me, a bad old man, it's very bad. So sad. It was hard to rebuild from the broken, struggling for a ray of life. Before he could take a breath, he was beaten back. Next, just contain SCP-2935 directly. Lin Xiu's eyes moved slightly. His gaze stayed on a corner of the exposure screen. After so long, the rendering of the scene is huge enough and the output of exposure value is approaching the upper limit. It's almost starting to finish. Procrastinate any longer. It's too late to change, and I don't know what problems will come up. As for the plan to pay SCP-2935 to Qian does, Lin Xiu has already drafted it in his mind and has already begun to implement it. Just when countless people were shocked by the horror of Xianyuan's sword, SCP-2935 is absolutely dead. Outside the deep cave, a goddess with an indescribable appearance suddenly ushered in. The peerless appearance has surpassed the upper limit of human language. KT-9927, Black Goddess, the mother of SCP-166, also Lin Xiu, made a double hit, successfully contain it together, and organize one of the top combat forces now. Walk outside the deep cave. All kinds of testing instruments, as well as 1 post at 10 steps and 1 sentry at 5 steps, extremely strict monitoring. It's of no use to him. Without disturbing anyone or anything, it easily came to the front of SCP-2935. The power to distort reality explodes. The surroundings are instantly emptied. Space-time and all kinds of common sense began to become chaotic. With SCP-2935 as the original center, the area of dozens of miles was split into a broken small plane. Unless you can break through his power. Otherwise, even the top space magician can't find this broken little plane through the chaotic path. It can be regarded as preventing the possibility of other people breaking in. Just when he finished casting the spell, almost at the same time, the familiar system prompt sounded in Lin Xiu's ear. Ding! SCP-2935 contained successfully. Rewards are being distributed. Drag. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a controllable version of SCP-2935. Did it work? Lin Xiu's eyes twitched slightly. Since KT-9927's actions were successful, the other plans he had preset were definitely no longer necessary. Ready to send back. These methods. It seems that it can only be used by other containment objects. The corners of Lin Xiu's mouth curved slightly, showing a subtle smile. Now, it's harvest season. Chapter 098. Shock strikes. The divine containment arrives for the first time. Lin Xiu's eyes move slightly. Reach out. Pull out the new data panel. The torrent of data poured in, interwoven into words, and emerged in front of my eyes. Controllable version of SCP-2935 is absolutely dead. The universe in the whole, inhabited by monsters that could destroy the dimension of the universe. A space-time anomaly. The appearance is a limestone cave, through the cave tunnel, to a dead mirror universe. People who enter definitely, when returning to the original universe from the cave. Death God will follow the people who enter after death. We will return to the original universe together, causing the original universe to gradually fall into death. It is known that under the influence of SCP-2935, there have been more than 3 dead universes, and the exact number is unknown. Even the immortal monster, SCP-682 Immortal Lizard, cannot resist this force. Owner Lin Xiu can control SCP-2935 to a certain extent, absorbing the influence of the death god meme inside. Absolute death? Lin Xiu murmured softly, with a somewhat complicated look in his eyes. From a moment, the panel appears. He instinctively knows the extent of his control over SCP-2935. Same as other containment items. Their inherent triggering laws cannot be reversed, but it can achieve a certain degree of control in the selection and scope of the trigger. Select the location where SCP-2935 manifests. There's also a certain degree of screening and control of the candidates for Death God to follow. Not bad. Lin Xiu smacked his lips. This reward can only be said to be better than nothing. After all, SCP-2935's effects are too overbearing. In an instant, it can affect the entire universe, and the consequences are too tragic. Even Lin Xiu is unwilling to abuse it. But, in this case, it would be better to make the place where SCP-2935 stays more secure. Lin Xiu's eyes moved slightly. Pull open the system panel to exchange a pocket space from inside. Manipulate SCP-2935 and put it inside. With the reality-bending power of KT-9927 as a peripheral. Plus, empty pocket space, independent of the dimensions of the real universe. Double insurance placement. Lin Xiu was finally able to reluctantly relax. How about it? Is it safer than directly sealing it with concrete? Lin Xiu smacked his lips. Although he said so, he was not idle when ordering the D-class personnel. Let them directly on the basis of space isolation. Another layer of high-strength concrete was pasted on the surface of SCP-2935 with 057. 3 layers of blockade. 9 times out of 10. Ding. The containment of SCP-2935 is complete. Do you want to start drawing the 12th containment object for exposure and arrival? Yes, apricot. Is it starting again? Lin Xiu raised his head from his buried head in research. He was checking just now the power in the Foundation-related organization panel, to see if there is any powerful means, whether it could be used as a whole card and classified and archived one by one for future use. At this time, a familiar system prompt sounds. Without thinking about it, Lin Xiu directly chose OK. Brush. The light and shadow are constantly changing. Amidst the interlaced brilliance among the thousands, a light and shadow that cannot be ignored soared out of it. There is a force that cannot be ignored. Divine radiance. It is indeed a divinity in an SCP. Is there a big guy? Lin Xiu raised his eyebrows. Among the countless contained items, he was actually drawn. Although, in the previous series of accidents, Lin Xiu had already been in contact with divinity, even the supreme divinity. There have also been touches, not only the moon in the water, but the degree of flowers in the mirror. But in the coming of the containment, it was the first time a divine personality appeared. And still this very special guy. It seems that we have to find a remote no man's land. Lin Xiu sighed softly, open the map miniature at will, and start counting soldiers and generals in the position. SHIL. D. What's the response from the Spear Bureau? Nick Fury looked up, temporarily put down the thick stack of documents in his hand. The 3 words, Xianyuan sword, are extremely eye-catching. Response. Phil Coulson shook his head. The honest man had a bit of helplessness on his face. The response from the Godspear Bureau is that they don't know either. Same style as previous reply. That matter has nothing to do with them, and they don't know anything about it. The Spear Bureau also said that if there is relevant information, we hope that we can send it to them at the same time. In this matter, we want to achieve the conditions for information sharing and jointly discover problems. Phil Coulson holds the tablet. The replies from the Spear Bureau are all above. Same as usual, positive communication, good attitude, but the owner of the room is unknown. What? Don't you know anything? It's nothing to do with them. Nick Fury's mouth twitched slightly. Liar. Thought he was ANR and never went to school? Anyway, he is also a cutting-edge talent who graduated from a top-notch degree. Although he has not studied the customs and habits of various countries in depth, but because of his position and the appearance of the Asgard Protoss, he has a lot of knowledge about the myths and legends of various countries. Xianyuan sword. In the history and mythology of the Great Xia, this legend has left a rich and colorful flourishing. He has a strong influence. From the ancient legends of Daxia, the weapons of the ancient kings possess incredible power, and now appears in the mirror universe. The names of those long bronze swords are also called Xianyuan sword. Plus, analyzed before, the mysterious man holding a spear is likely to be of the Daxia race. Several analyses and assumptions are consistent with each other. Xuanyuanjian and even the Foundation definitely have an inseparable connection with Daxia. The Spear Bureau said, they don't know. Ghost letter. It must be hiding it again. Nick Fury's expression was a little stiff. Who doesn't know that the ancient country in the East is best at hiding? It looked tepid. Result. Every time he took out something, Evening Jiang would be so scared that his head would drop, calling the rabbit too cruel. The style of conduct in ordnance technology has also been brought to the field of mysticism by them. No, we must speed up penetration and detection. This is very likely, and it is a huge breakthrough in our understanding of the space-time foundation. Nick Fury stared. With a dark face, he made up his mind instantly. Time is limited. Looking at the beating time on the screen, Dan looked a little dignified. Countdown, 9 hours and 32 minutes. Nick Fury is gearing up. Try to dig first-hand confidence. And he regarded it as a deep hidden spear game. In the conference hall, all the superpowers in the Spear Bureau looked at each other in blank dismay. Could it be? Is there really a certain branch of the Foundation in our Great Xia territory? Or, in ancient times, our country had contact with the Foundation, the weather which couldn't bear it first, and open her mouth first. This, maybe. Zhang Xian had a serious expression on his face. For the first time, he was a little uncertain. Xianyuan sword. This ancient name is really too imaginative. As long as the blood of Daxia flows in the body, it is impossible not to recognize these 3 characters. There are many kinds of legends. But whatever, they are all well-deserved, important weapons of the country in Dacia. Such a name, such a form, actually appeared as a suppressive force in the Foundation. One debut, it easily crushed the god of brokenness. The powerful combat power is staggering, and even more coveted, if they can handle this power with this mentality. One time, countless people flocked into the museum, trying to control new power from prehistoric cultural relics. The unpopular history, archaeology, related majors rushed to the top of the TO list in an instant. Pity result? Nothing. Let's put them on the move. Zhang Xian paused, bed. Finally, he opened his mouth. You can't put all your energy on illusory pursuits. People still have to keep their feet on the ground. Take back 70% of the people, spread them all over the country to deploy defenses, and try to ensure domestic stability and chaos. Zhang Xian's voice was extremely firm. Turned. Look at the screen in the sky. The face that had been pretending to be firm all the time couldn't help showing fatigue. Is it starting again? Zhang Xian's murmured voice whirled along with the sound of the wind. Numbers jump. Countdown. 8 hours and 28 minutes military. When will this kind of day be the first? In the conference room, there were shouts one after another. Ying Jiang, who has been educated by SCP several times and suffered heavy losses, has been beaten a little bit. Once again, the countdown to the arrival of the contents appears. There was no fluctuation in my heart, and I even wanted to laugh a little. After being educated several times, Eagle Sauce has become much more low-key. Eagle Sauce is bad, not stupid. If you lose money again and again, but still pounce on it again and again, isn't that a dog who can't change eating shit? They are wolves, not a dog, at least. You must also see enough benefits, plus acceptable risks. Only then can this hungry wolf come out of the cage again. As for now, let's just show it off. A decadent atmosphere spread in the meeting room. Even the leader of the Hawk faction, the general who has always been iron-headed, is almost the same, sitting in position without saying a word, like a sculpture. Very calm, only the constantly beating hands change in the clock. Countdown, 5 hours and 10 minutes, new containment. Perhaps this is my chance? Collector's gaze moved slightly, with a greedy look in his eyes. He is about to become the king of junk, desperate to get a good SCP or two to add to his treasure trove. The extreme reversal of Collector's attitude fully illustrates how quickly the ancients can change their faces. It seems the new arena is about to kick off again. Gao Tianzuan's eyes were filled with anticipation. His face is full of expressions that he doesn't think it's a big deal to watch the excitement. As an ancient man with a long life, his greatest hobby is watching sports. Obviously, the arrival of the containment. It is most likely to cause competition among the strong. The sudden change in reality is much more interesting than the conflict in the small grid on the ring. Countdown. 3 hours and 24 minutes. Hope it doesn't spill over into Asgard. Odin's gaze narrowed slightly. Ambition obviously wears off a lot after saying goodbye to Ancient One. Not long after returning to Asgard, after re-smelting the eternal gun into shape. On the sky screen, the countdown bell is almost over. Odin, who hasn't had time to take a good rest. He was hurriedly pulled up again to deal with it. Fortunately, he doesn't have to worry about the rest of Odin's sleep now. Otherwise, he would have been forced to rest a long time ago. Hold the spring water in your hand and drink the fountain of youth. Odin, who had recovered several duplications, couldn't help looking at Asgard, as if he could see the seal in the deepest part of Asgard through layers of buildings. Perhaps. You could try. Odin frowned, his eyes twitching. Anyway, they are both father and daughter. The blood connection is a natural bond. Countdown. 1 hour, 32 minutes, Kamar Taj, trust Strange. He's the best we've ever had. Ancient One just left a sentence behind. He disappeared into the portal and went to the mirror space alone. This, Supreme Magician, this is how to do what? Leaving a bunch of bewildered magicians and apprentices staring at each other. His expression was a little strange. Is Sorcerer Supreme, who has only learned magic for 1 day, really reliable? Although I was apprehensive, the soul of Tu Tsao is burning. But Time passing by. Obviously, they didn't give them a chance to struggle and refute. Countdown. 0 hour 59 minutes for a short time. Passed away quietly in the busy actions of countless people. Soon, the end is coming. As the ticking hour hand returned to its position again, new content finally appeared on the screen that remained unchanged in the sky. Ding. Countdown to 0. Exposure. The 12th containment item SCP. 1428 Golden Crow. The screen in the sky gradually lights up. The picture shows a well-lit appearance, and in the very center, one can see a mysterious temple or altar. Suspected ancient ruins. On the weathered ruins, traces of the passage of time are described. Although I don't know when it was built, there are a lot of religious texts on it, which are smeared on the wall like murals. With the weathering of time, it has disappeared for a long time. There are only a few faint traces left. Hurry up. Invite all linguists, mystics, and scholars who are proficient in the customs of various places. Nick Fury slapped the table and roared, one-eyed, fixedly staring at the screen. He has a hunch. This time, a big guy might show up. And, for the first time, there are man-made murals related to the containment. Whether it is to deduce the identity of the contained object from it, or corroborate relevant civilizations, and probe into the nature of the contained objects. All are rare first-hand information, absolutely not to be missed. SHIELD at the ready. In an instant, he became busy because of the words of braised egg. Besides, Golden Crow, Nick Fury murmured under his breath. The name always seems a bit familiar. Chapter 099, The Legendary Beast. Collector is excited. The screen turns. The ruins of the temple under the sun soon came to the appearance of dusk. The slightly dim sunlight poured on the ruins. It looks a bit vicissitudes. Let the ancient temple, which has been precipitated by time, become more time-honored. GA. How? GA. The crow flapping its wings slowly flew over from the side of the temple. Dark wings. Looks very handsome. The cold eyes are like two obsidian like black ink. The wings exude a metallic luster, like a spectacle made of metal. But judging from the ability of the crow's flight, just now. But it is obviously a living thing. SCP 1428 Golden Crow Object Class. Keter SCP 1482-1 does not need to eat, sleep, or breathe, does not age, and is not adversely affected in any way by prolonged exposure to extreme heat or shooting. It can ignore the attack brought by high temperature, and the power of radiation is only the nourishment for its growth. Military, a monster that never sleeps, does not need to eat, and does not age. The general frowned. His expression was a little dignified, but compared with the other terrifying existences in the containment, it seems to be much more ordinary. No sleep, no rest, no food, but normal activities. It is indeed somewhat abnormal. It even violates the known law of conservation of energy. But putting it on SCP, containment, these distorted rules and existences that go against common sense, it seems a bit too ordinary. Looks like an unremarkable containment object. The general murmured softly. The wind has stopped. The rain has stopped. Eagle Sauce feels like he's doing it again. If it's just an ordinary SCP, containment, perhaps we can move a little bit. The general's cloudy eyes lit up, and he began to look greedily. Anyway, it is also a containment object, and its essence has surpassed countless treasures. The general of the army saw it through. These weird containment objects are all the kind with explosive combat power. Powerful. They're not entitled to occupy it all. The unremarkable ones are just right to start with. Perhaps this is an opportunity, a chance to make the Empire glory again. The general of the army was overwhelmed by greed and turned into a jackal again. Keter represents the danger level of the doomsday disaster. The observer frowned. He has read the Foundation's hazard ratings for various containment objects from the database of the Earth Guest Organization. He definitely knew what Keter stood for. Before, SCP-2935's hazard class is this. Once it spreads, an unknown number of universes will sink into death. But it was just a crow this time? It's a bit too weak. The observer shook his head, feeling nothing more than that. The color is pitch black. A mediocre crow. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like a powerful posture. SCP-1428-1 has never been observed communicating. Its level of intelligence is unknown. SCP-1428-1 is a creature resembling a crow in appearance. It has 3 legs. It has 3 legs and does not have a cloaca. According to observation, the 3rd foot has been retracted under its body. Spear Bureau 3-legged. Golden Crow. D. This can't be the legendary god beast. The weather which couldn't help but gasped. Sun. Golden Crow. Immortal fantasy creature. If it is only the Golden Crow, it can also be understood as a Golden Crow or other existences. But, coupled with the characteristics of 3 legs. 3-legged Golden Crow. For any Daxia people who are deeply influenced by culture, do you need to explain what represents behind it? The incarnation of the sun in mythology, the 3-legged Golden Crow. Apart from this divine beast, there is no other existence at all. Director? Even the saber, who had been standing silently like an assassin lurking, couldn't help but speak. Maybe it really is, Zhang Xian murmured in a low voice, and he couldn't help showing a bit of hope on his stern face. Although it is not as good as the dragon that is regarded as a national totem, the status of the Golden Crow in the Great Xia cannot be underestimated, and in the hearts of many people, there's a lot of faith. And, to some extent, the 3-legged Golden Crow has an inseparable connection with the Xia. Same. There could be such a legend in the ancient Great Xia. Also proved, it is very likely that in ancient times, Daxia had already had third-party contact with SCP and its containment. A. The pot related to Daxia and the Foundation is probably completely irresistible. Zhang Xian rubbed the center of his brows, feeling a bit bitter. He can already see a certain braised egg. He questioned him with a dark face. 3-legged Golden Crow? I knew that Daxia had contact with SCP abnormalities. The Golden Crows have come out. They won't admit it. Nick Fury slapped the table angrily. His complexion was too dark, and the marinated egg, which was already dark, was now darker in color. No, that's right. The Divine Spear Bureau still refuses to admit it. They insist that they have never been exposed to SCPs and anomalies, and that they know nothing about them is just a coincidence. Phil Coulson scratched his head, embarrassed. Coincide? Nick Fury sneered disdainfully. How can there be so many coincidences? If you believe it, you are an idiot. He is not a 3-year-old child. What kind of bullshit is he talking? But, however, we have also comprehensively analyzed some content from the mouths of historians, mystics, and custom scholars. Phil Coulson didn't dare touch the brow of the marinated egg. The honest man spread out the tablet in his hand, on which was the analysis of the emergency summary. Golden Crow, also known as the 3-legged Golden Crow. In Daxia mythology, there's a black 3-legged crow in the center of the sun. The black crow exists in the center of the sun, surrounded by golden flames. So, it is called the Golden Official. It is one of the divine birds in the myths and legends of the Great Xia. It has the power to control the sun. It was once incarnated as the sun. In the myths and legends, he is the sun originally, and he also controls countless creatures. Fire, the sun, the incarnation of the eternal flame. Here, these materials, not only the surrounding agents, but even the gathered Avengers were stunned. Sudden, Nick Fury's body shook, as if thinking of something incredible. Immediately exclaimed, "The sun? The Golden Crow? If this Golden Crow is the incarnation of the sun, doesn't that mean that it is very likely to be the god of the sun? Belongs to divinity in SCP. Whether the sun god in myths and legends exists is still a matter of debate. But the 3-legged Golden Crow in the SCP is a real existence, and it appeared before their eyes. If it is really as described in the legend, then he definitely belongs to the ranks of divinity." 2. Divinity? Nick Fury couldn't help swallowing. SCP-160 SIXS Mother, KT 9927, is a Foundation-certified deity. The terrifying strength directly crushed the Earth and finally spread to the multi-universe level. Thinking about it is frightening. The power of the goddess is small. Make a city completely disappear without a trace and erase the memory together. Now, the deep pits on the surface are still ugly scars on the land of Yingjiang. It's called Goddess of War. This golden crow, isn't it really divine? Think here. Braised egg couldn't help but focus on the screen. Just at the moment, the public opinion fermented on the internet was also completely detonated. This three-legged golden crow? Is it what I think? My God. It turns out that the myths and legends are true. I knew that the ancients would not speculate casually. Golden Crow, sun god, in the myths and legends, his personality is not low, right? At least he is also a front-ranking existence. The Golden Crow has appeared. When will Niuhua, Fuxi, Xingtian, and Quafu, yes. Xianyuan. Xianyuan's sword is all there. So it's not too much to have a yellow emperor? Smecta, to be honest, according to the research of our historians, the Golden Crow is actually the great god of our universe country. Why are you guys again? I'm a history major, and I can prove that the netizens of Universe Kingdom are right. The three-legged crow is indeed the supreme god of Goguryeo, but Goguryeo seems to have been wiped out by the Tang dynasty thousands of years ago. See Appendix 1 for details. Haha. I laughed so hard. I just want to say that upstairs. Tight pants are hot. The far side of the moon, in a dimension that no one knows about. Golden Crow, the real deity, is the sun, the upper god in myths and legends. Most things in the universe. It is very difficult to hide from the eyes of observers, and this is also the source of his name as a witness to a major event. The reaction on Earth, he definitely knew, muttering the collected information in a low voice. Next moment, the voice suddenly became serious, a symbol of infinity, light, and heat. This description, is it another divine anomaly? The observer looked a little dignified. Ordinary SCP anomalies are already difficult enough. It is conceivable how difficult divine anomalies are. A glimpse of KT 9927. It shattered the confidence of countless people. Even the projection of the Phoenix Force fell to the ground. If it is a real divine anomaly descending, even the observer himself does not have much confidence in being able to deal with it. But this anomaly, no matter how you look at it, is just an ordinary crow. The observer shook his head. I feel like I'm thinking too much, and I'm a bit overwhelmed. And at this moment, in the light curtain, new content is also slowly updated. SCP 1428-1 has 3 states: inert state, passive state, and active state. When in an inert state, it does not exhibit any abnormality other than the above properties. When in a passive state, it will start emitting gamma rays of different intensities. Radiation intensity does not have a clear rule in time. It is roughly between 5 and 90 W/M2, but occasionally reaches 150 W/M2. Photon energy, the amount fluctuates between 1 and 1.5 MeV. When activated, SCP 1428-1 will generate plasma and thermal energy, which is consistent with the performance of the corona, and release a gamma with an exponentially increasing intensity. The eruption of magenta rays. The release equivalent is extremely large and can cause catastrophic damage. Gamma rays? Banner's face changed suddenly, as if thinking of himself. I couldn't help looking at my body through the smooth, floor-to-ceiling mirror. The essence of his super ability is an accidental product after exposure to a large amount of gamma rays. This exception can release gamma rays at will? Banner's expression was a little shocked. But the one who was more shocked than him was obviously the observer. 3 forms. The observer's expression was solemn, and he felt as if he had been slapped in the face. Really, SCP anomalies are existences that cannot be viewed with common sense if you underestimate them. Absolutely miserable results. It's a good thing it wasn't in a battle, otherwise it would be more than just a slap in the face. The observer covered his face, feeling a little pain. Didn't wait for him to say anything more. SCP-1428, whose exposure has ended, has begun to descend. The Golden Crow together with the entire ancient temple. They all disappeared from the screen, and when they reappeared, They had already arrived at a remote sandbar. The sun was scorching across the sky, surrounded by endless yellow sand. Finely crushed sand like gold is piled up to form peaks. It looks like a remote and desolate desert that has not been inhabited for a long time. Quick, lock position. Huge, abandoned, uninhabited desert. The sun hangs high in the middle, ruling out night and unsuitable places. Trying a time zone, lock location. Nick Fury is worthy of being a professional. He locked the key points with a few simple clicks and eliminated a lot of wrong answers. There are many deserts on Earth, but on a sufficiently large basis, coupled with time zones, no one messy restrictions. The messy quantity is quickly sifted out clearly. All the garrisons near the desert are dispatched. The high-level Eagle Sauce roared. If Nick Fury's method is screening, then the method of the Eagle Sauce military is quantity, relying on global hegemony. Anyway, there are garrisons everywhere, and the army directly presses them down and searches wantonly. Can cover firepower, who plays tactical crossover? As for the horrors of SCP-1428, isn't there 3 forms? Just take advantage of it before it changes. Catch it in the first form. Wouldn't it be a complete success? This is a divine anomaly in SCP. Moreover, because of the 3-stage feature, the difficulty of control is greatly reduced. Make a vacancy. All doable. Give a go. Turn your bike into a motorcycle. Ing Zhang's gambler mentality has begun to grow wildly in his heart. Golden Crow, son, looks like an interesting SCP anomaly. Collector's eyes moved slightly. The greed in his eyes is getting stronger and stronger. The arrogance of the ancient made him instinctively look down on other creatures. If it was the supreme divinity, he might still be afraid, but it was just a little crow. So what if you have a 3-stage transformation? That is, there is no divinity marked, nor is it described as a supreme divinity. On the contrary, various interesting reactions like a corona attracted collectors' attention every minute. In my treasure chest, should just return a lighting source. Collector twitched his lips. The covetousness on his face was undisguised, as if he had already regarded the Jin Wu as something in his pocket. He, from Earth. It's close at hand. This SCP's plundering feast is definitely his only zero. Chapter 100. Out of the Myth. The scorching sun that cannot be desecrated. Strong malice spread in the universe, constantly focusing on SCP-1428. Jin Wu has an unpretentious appearance. There are many coveted eyes just when some people's greed is hot and expanding. Crows in the desert. In the unknown, it seemed that some kind of mutation was triggered. Boom! The flames are loud. What is that? The observer's pupils shrink. And the desert under the sun has a very high temperature, which is normal. But when this temperature is high, even the sand in the desert has started to melt and form crystal particles, which is definitely not normal. Hundreds, even a high temperature of thousands of degrees. With the golden crow as the center, it slowly spread outward. The sand near the core of SCP-1428 has begun to dissolve into crystals, as if pinched by invisible power. It was fired into colored glaze, which reflected strange brilliance in the sun. It looks like an exquisite handicraft, but in the eyes of observers, there is no way to appreciate it, only deep fear. Divinity. The observer paused every word. Both the voice and expression are a bit dignified. The jet-black feathers of the golden crow gradually turned golden as the temperature continued to rise. The golden brilliance flows on the body. Every ray of brilliance carries a terrifying high temperature. It is definitely not something that ordinary creatures can have. There's only one possibility for a rule-like feeling: divinity. Corona. The observer's tone was heavy. It quickly reminded me of the previous exposure content. SCP-1428-1 has crossed the inert state, the passive state, and is about to enter the active state. Really? The observer narrowed his eyes slightly. He has basically been able to confirm that the Golden Crow is definitely a divine anomaly in SC-017-P. The inert state is mediocre. But once activated, then SCP-1428-1 is a proper divine creature, just while the observer stays in the dark watching the screen. The other side, those who search for the direction of SCP-1428 finally locked the direction of the desert. Call out. Tearing air sounds in the distance. But what is faster than sound is light and shadow originally. In the sky, two streaks of lightning flashed across. Appearing in everyone's eyes is the extremely flamboyant Superman, who wears underwear on the outside, and Bruce, his external brain. Superman? Batman. Wow. Superman and Batman are all deployed. This time it's the Justice League Assembly. Come on, Superman, get rid of this big bird. That's right, it's so hot. This strange bird can actually affect the surrounding temperature. Let's get rid of it. All kinds of bullet screens are flying around the internet, especially the plate near this desert location. That's right, the temperature has risen. It was like two suns appearing in the sky at the same time. The terrifying high temperature began to spread to the surroundings, and the temperature suddenly climbed upwards. In just a moment, it increased by more than 10 degrees. I couldn't figure it out at first. It can only be attributed to the complex and changeable weather. Result: wait until the place where SCP-1428-1 descends is discovered. The answer was revealed instantly. Golden Crow. It's all the fault of the three-legged Golden Crow, worshipped as a sun god and a terrifying anomaly in SCPs. Changing the ambient temperature or something is really normal. But normal does not mean it can be tolerated, especially when the temperature rise is still spreading. Countless people have been tortured by the high temperature. Can't wait to pick up the weapon and go up. But now, the Justice League is here, and still the strongest Superman, Da Chow, who can smash the continental plate, is not easy to deal with a crow. The fan of my home appliance is almost spinning out sparks, and finally, I don't have to be tortured by the high temperature. The two suns are really tormenting. People who were devastated by the high temperature finally saw the dawn of rescue and felt like weeping with joy. But for Superman facing SCP-1428-1, the mood is obviously not as optimistic as theirs. This monster, I feel the breath of the sun on it. Superman frowned. His expression was a little dignified. In his eyes, SCP-1428-1 not far away is like a small sun to some extent. Not small, but the sun in its germination stage. The essential brilliance is not even inferior to the sun in the solar system. It just seems to be in a dormant state, not completely awakening, just a power leak so that Superman dare not underestimate. The Chinese character face is slightly wrinkled, and the expression is a bit indescribably dignified. This definitely the scariest opponent he has ever met. It's just like, face his son, not to describe, but the real son, Bruce. Superman frowned, turned his head, looked at Batman next to him, and instinctively sought help from the external brain. Don't get excited. Calm down. That monster didn't notice us. Perhaps you could try to get close first and collect some intelligence and information. Bruce whispered softly. He is not a reckless character. Good. Superman nodded. For Bruce's suggestion, he has a high degree of implementation, because SCP-1428-1 is in a state of metamorphosis. The terrifying high temperature diffused outwards, and the entire ruins of the temple were in the high temperature of hundreds of degrees. Even if Bruce had a battle suit, it was inconvenient to approach. It can only stand on the sidelines and provide original works of wisdom. But for Superman only, sprinkle water, ignoring the high temperature on Baidu, enter the temple easily. This high temperature is nothing to him at all. There was little movement. Did not attract the attention of SCP-1428-1. Corresponding. After the Superman sneaks in, the specific scene in the temple also appeared in the eyes of everyone. The highly weathered murals are difficult to see clearly. Superman is not a researcher in the history department, so he didn't expect to see any clues from the inside. After a few superficial glances, he quickly walked through the ruins, followed the broken stone slabs, and walked into the interior. The Golden Crow is at the top of the building. Floating in the golden light intertwined with countless flames, it exudes a heat wave that cannot be ignored. The golden color is like a little sun. And after entering the gate of the temple, passing through a corner, you came to a flat square, which looked a bit wide. What is that? Superman's pupils shrank, and his forward pace suddenly stopped. In the center of the square, he found a statue half the height of a man. Material looks like some kind of jade. In Superman's headset, Bruce's confused voice came. Although he was forced to stay outside because of the high temperature and couldn't get close, Bruce definitely didn't do nothing. Various instruments are displayed, and a small war room is almost formed next to the Batmobile. With the help of his unique high-tech, everything Superman has seen and touched is broadcast live. "Crick, come closer," Bruce whispered softly, with a solemn expression on his face. In this kind of place, what can appear must have no effect. "Good," Superman nodded. "The biggest feature is listening to advice." After approaching, the individual who can see this suspected jade statue has 3 hands, holding 3 objects respectively: the earth, the sun, and the special matter that was burned. In heat sight, it can feel obvious temperature on its body, about 30 degrees Celsius. Click it. The sudden movement of the statue startled Superman out of his wits. Actions are tiny. After being watched by Superman, he slowly opened his mouth. It seems to be trying to speak, but no sound came out. "Wrong, it's not jade. It's more like some kind of organism." Bruce frowned. An anomaly was detected in the statue's feedback. And what's even weirder, judging from the degree of weathering around and the old traces on the sculptures, it has a history beyond imagination. It is a remnant of an ancient era, but its appearance is intact and shows no signs of decomposition. The life detector did not detect any breath. Biologically dead. But during the thermal vision detection, it was found that the other party maintained a temperature of 30 C and was able to move. Conflicting conclusions, making this eccentric statue even more unusual. Something's wrong. Very wrong. Bruce frowned, his expression a little dignified. "SHILD what?" "Nothing." Nick Fury turned his head in disbelief. His expression was gloomy. "Kinda want to hit someone. There's so many murals, plus new jade sculptures. There's also the highly directional Golden Crow Divine Beast. The intelligence agencies and analysis experts have nothing to gain once they get it. Could it be that his SHILD is filled with a group of tax thieves? Does it work at all?" The stewed egg is a little bit stretched. Forehead. The answer given by the analysis experts is that the content of these murals does not match the religious texts in this area. In mythology, the characteristics of the Golden Crow have no similarities with the murals of this temple. This SCP anomaly is very likely to be very different from the mythical beasts. Phil Coulson scratched his head. The good old man who was caught in the middle said that it was also difficult for him to do it. Among them, the most obvious difference is that it seems to record a special kind of human sacrifice, and there is also an unknown existence called unknown content, a suspected entity, possibly related to the statue Superman saw in the center of the plaza. This kind of image has appeared many times. Most of the time, there's an entity similar to SCP-1428-1, staying on the opponent's shoulder. Phil Coulson handed over the tablet, on which were the conclusions given by a large number of experts. Sacrifice. Mustariman. Nick Fury frowned. A golden crow that came out of the myth has caused the temperature in the nearby area to soar. Now, it is also suspected that there is an unknown, mysterious strong man standing in front of the golden crow behind. An instance of SCP-1428-1. In the images, they often appear on each other's shoulders, and they have a good relationship at first glance. If it is in mythology, the commonly used 1-2-2 technique is okay. It just shows that the Golden Crow still has a human form in addition to the 3 stages. RO. 3-hand entity belonging to some kind of independent, mysterious existence? Gulu. Nick Fury couldn't help swallowing. Instantly, I thought of SCP-166 and the goddess K-9927 who came out from behind her. Probably not. So unlucky again. The corner of Braised Egg's mouth twitched slightly, and his uneasy heart became even more uneasy. But without waiting for him to continue thinking, on screen, the peaceful exploration scene changed in an instant, fast-forwarding to a fierce confrontation. Everyone, be careful and stand by, ready to attack at any time. Let Doctor Strange lock the direction, and if something goes wrong, send the location immediately. Nick Fury spoke hastily. After speaking, don't dare to waste time. Turning his head quickly, he concentrated on the screen. The behavior of the surrounding agents was exactly the same as that of the marinated egg, and they all stared intently. Desert Temple ruins. Just as Superman continued to explore inside and unearthed more and more secrets. Brutal. A sound wave exploded and suddenly resounded in the sky. It was obviously just the sound of birds chirping. But in the sound waves, there seemed to be a terrifying force. Where the sound diffuses, the temperature rose instantly, as if a spark had been thrown into the gasoline, and it burned and boiled instantly into a sea of flames. Boom! Fila. The air began to spread and twist. It's like a dancing flame is constantly rising. Careful! Bruce screamed in the headset. Superman instinctively flashed back. Call out. A scarlet ray shot out from a very far distance. Not just one or two. Instead, there are thousands of paths like countless arrows raining down. Thousands of rays penetrate through it, and at extremely high temperatures, it also has a very strong penetrating 1.6. Fortunately, Superman's reaction is fast enough. Wipe the body to avoid. The temperature is so high, so fast. Superman frowned, rubbing the place where the ray avoided. The battle suit had scorching marks on it. That is to say, Kryptonians have a special physique. After all, it is a physique that absorbs energy from the sun, and its resistance to high temperature and radiation is quite high. If it is replaced by another superhero, the impact of these scratches can greatly reduce their combat effectiveness. Unable to struggle, directly ushered in defeat. Wake up! Superman frowned, looking in the direction of the attack. Brutal, the third foot extend from the abdomen. The golden crow spread its wings and soared in the air. Endless light and heat bloomed on it. Divine radiance flows from the golden feathers. With a majesty that cannot be ignored. Golden crow mighty, like a sun, rising slowly on the horizon. Exuding majesty that cannot be desecrated. The light and heat are more terrifying than the sun in the sky. One time, Superman suddenly found out. The yellow light of the sun that I received from the sun was forcibly interrupted. How can this be? Superman's pupils trembled, and there was a rare look of shock in his eyes. Sun, the everlasting sun, disappeared? Phew. In his power perception, yin-yang disappeared. The sun, one of his sources of power, has disappeared into perception, let alone absorbing the sun's yellow light from it to enhance his own strength. The originally strong and invincible strength was cut down in half in an instant. And the only remaining power of the sun in the body. It is also continuously flowing towards SCP 1428-1. He is the real sun.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.